Peace. Greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. We going in tonight. We didn't do our Thursday show because we wanted to give a little more cultural breakdown to the systems that we're into, whether it be Islamic traditions or whether it be today's form of what's called hoodoo today. Some call it juju, and some may call it Ife. Some even are into Santeria. Like, we want to touch on some of these things tonight, and I definitely want to give a shout out to my team. I got a couple of my brothers. I'm waiting for them to come on as well. Hit the like button, family. Share this with your fam if you want to. If you want them to hear a little bit of the discussion, because we want to get into Islam tonight, man. I got my brother Dr. Logic in the building. He's already on deck. I'm waiting. Josh is going to be in and out tonight. I'm waiting for my brother Ali. Hopefully we get a special guest appearance from one of our original team members, my brother Grimmy Arnell. So what I want to do is, because I got a presentation. This is my wheelhouse right here, right? But I want to start off with this article right here on hip hop, because I don't really think people understand the significance of how Islam really influences early hip hop. And hip hop literally becomes the voice, whether it's positive or whether it's negative, it becomes the voice of our people. So I want to share this article, and I want to go in. So let's start here. Let me see. Let's bring this. Let's bring this here. All right, this is from WNYC News, the Islamic Roots of Hip Hop. It's published last year, 2019. It says, in the Big Daddy Kane track, Ain't No Half Step, and the rapper famously signs off with the line, hold up the peace sign, assalamu alaikum, the traditional Arabic greeting for Muslims. It translates to peace be upon you, and it's not the only references to Islam in hip-hop's fundamental tracks. Many of the pioneers of the genre identified as Muslim, including Rakim, Africa Islam, and Q-Tip. In the late 80s, early 90s, if you were to walk around New York City riding the subway, you would see people wearing Africa medallions or Malcolm X paraphernalia, says Zahir Ali, the oral historian at the Brooklyn Historical Society. Ali hosted a panel on Islam and the Soul of Hip Hop on Wednesday. He said many rappers were heavily influenced by the Nation of Islam and the 5% Nation, an offshoot movement founded in Harlem in the 1960s. Rapper Lakim Shabaz's 1988 song Black is Black name drops the Final Call, the official newspaper of the Nation of Islam. As hip hop continued to evolve in the 1990s, even non-Muslim rappers embraces the vernacular. Peace became a common tag to signify the end of a rap song. Wes Jackson, the founder of the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival, said it wasn't a coincidence. That was from Assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam. There was so much language that we took that you didn't realize it, because, again, it was just in the air, he said. So I'm going to stop sharing right there. And I wanted to lead with that, because I don't think that we understand how much Islam influences our culture, that in many aspects, Islam becomes the culture in a sense. And I want to get into that. If there was something that you wanted to add, Brother Logic, before I start going into my presentation on that part, please, bro, go in.
Well, absolutely, man. When you was talking about the impact of Islam in American culture, it reminded me of a paper I wrote in college on the early impact of African Islam in America, or I forgot what it was called, the early presence of Islam in America. But when I wrote that paper, there was a lot of things that I found that I thought just were amazing. And it made a whole lot of sense when you tied in historically. So during this whole framing of our identity, being American descendants of slavery, and understanding our story and articulating our narrative, We have to go through all of it. We have to talk about all of it because it's our story. So even when we get to the spiritual side, right, we can talk about how, like, every people, every culture has all of that inside of it. The food, we talk about the food, we talk about the slang, we talk about the style that we wear as far as our clothing representation. Now we're talking about the religious aspects of being ADOS and how those things was brought about and how we manifested and was able to exercise these religious practices, because we're people from all over the country, right? We ended up going all over the country. And a lot of people just don't understand the entire story and the impact and the influences that help create this whole identity and this whole new breed of people known as the American Negro, the American Black, the Native Black American, and the American descendants of slaves. So you got a whole litany of combinations of identity that was like an infusing of a lot of different things. So to understand that is to understand yourself and to understand us. So when I was writing this paper, I found that there was early presence of, I'm talking about pre-Columbian, all of that, pre-Amerigo Vespucci presence of Islamic writing in California. There was signs of Islamic civilization all up and down the Mississippi River. They had found elephant bones that they found that the elephants had came from Africa. And in some of the stones, there was Arabic writing on them that said Islam and different things like of that nature. And, you know, all this stuff there's excellent sources that you can read about all of this stuff. I'll put some in the chat, but a lot of people don't really think about, because of the way we were forced into Christianity, they don't think about all of the other things that we were doing and all the other impacts culturally, dealing with religion and spirituality that we brought to our whole American experience and made it an American experience, and how it played its role in shaping what America is. So I think this is going to be a good show today. We're going to talk about some things that a lot of you may not have known before, but you're going to know it after the night. You're going to know it well.
Indeed, Brother Ali is in the building. Did you want to touch on anything real quick pertaining to what I just read on the roots of Islam in hip hop, how Islam influenced a lot of early hip hop artists and hip hop itself?
You asking me?
Yeah. I just wanted, before I go in, I'm about to pull up my presentation. So, and I had read an article.
Oh man. Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, a lot of particularly the 90s hip hop, you know what I'm saying? A lot of the 90s hip hop had a lot of Islamic influence, particularly from like the 5% Nation, Gods and Earths, as you know, they're also known as, you know, some Nation of Islam influence with the group Public Enemy, Professor Griff, people of that nature. You know, leaders of the New School, Wu-Tang Clan, Big Daddy Kane, you name it, right? There's a lot of Rakim Allah, you know, there's a lot of hip hop that was touched by Islam. Jazzo that was with Jay-Z. Jazzo was a member of the Nuwaubian Nation. He was actually a minister, one of Imam Isa's ministers, Dr. York, he's known as, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of particularly the 90s hip hop that was touched by Islam. Q-Tip is a Muslim. You know, there's a lot of them that would claim to be Muslims, you know what I mean? I believe Ice Cube claims to be a Muslim, you know. It's there, man. That influence is there, without a doubt, without question. My brother Jalil is a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? From Houdini.
Shout out to Houdini.
You know, there's a lot of Muslims.
See if we could get Brother Jalil on the show one day and just talk some hip hop. You know. So yeah, you know, Jay-Z was also in Dr. York's camp. Prodigy from Mobb Deep was in Dr. York's camp in the Ansarullah community in Brooklyn. You had KMD who did the song Peach Fuzz. So we definitely had some major influence on how culture was shaped. So I want to get into my little presentation real quick. I'm gonna I tried to like really condense what I wanted to say, because I could do this for like 3 hours straight. So I was like, I need to just do a little bit so my bros and everybody could come in. So I'm gonna keep it to that and then join the conversation as we go along. So let me go here. Slideshow. Boom, 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 boom. So we're gonna start here. Okay, this is what you've seen in the thumbnail. This is the Moorish science. The first emblem is of the Moorish Science Temple of America. It is the first Islamic organization in the United States of America. No, it doesn't mean that this group under Noble Drew Ali brought Islam. Somebody got to mute out real quick, bros. I hear a lot of background noise. It doesn't mean that this group brought Islam, but it was the first Islamic organization in the United States of America. Out of the Moorish Science Temple of America, which was founded by Prophet Noble Drew Ali, you get the Nation of Islam, one of the most influential organizations among our people in the history of this country. Some great leaders have come out of this movement, like Malcolm X, like Muhammad Ali, like Khalid Muhammad. Many, many other people were touched directly or indirectly by the Nation of Islam. Then you had the 5% Nation of Gods and Nerds, right, whose first original name was the 5% Nation of Islam. This was the sect that I was born into. So for me, it's just a continuation of this Islam that finds its way here in the United States of America, because this is indeed our original religion. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. And then you had the Ansarul Allah community under Imam Isa, who, if anybody know, I remember talking to my mother about the Muslims in Brooklyn that you've seen wearing the all white with the book stands and tables all over New York City. My mother said they had that area of Bed-Stuy, which was on Bushwick Avenue, on lockdown so tight that stray dogs were scared to walk on them blocks. So in this American space, we carved out through Islam our niche, and there was a connection to our ancient ancestry through Islam, and it also helps fuel the rise of a lot of what we see in Afrocentrism today. So I want to read this quote. This is from The Black Gods of the Metropolis, Negro Religious Cult of the Urban North by Arthur Huff Fawcett. This is the 1971 version. The original version was published in 1944. It reads, "The Black Muslims are directly descended from the Moorish Science Temple. Elijah Muhammad, Muslim leader, stresses economic and cultural independence of Blacks. Malcolm X became Elijah's disciple while serving a jail sentence. Eldridge Cleaver and many other recent Black leaders became followers and proselytizers in this ostensibly religious movement. The tenuous thread woven by Noble Drew Ali and long ago tiny missions in Detroit, Chicago, and Newark has penetrated the labyrinthine political maze all the way to the Black Panthers. Truly, those who ponder the future of our own great nation would do well to recall the aphorism, mighty oaks from tiny acorns grow." So Arthur Huff Fawcett is showing Prophet Noble Drew Ali the ultimate reverence in this particular excerpt, and he calls him the tiny acorn from which these mighty oaks have grown, which become the Black Muslim movement. Out of the Black Muslim movement, you get the Black Panther Party. Even deeper than that, you have some of the gangs, right? In Chicago, the Vice Lords, the Gangster Disciples, some of them follow more of a Hebrew Israelite religious leaning, but it's Islam that influences that culture. Jeff Ford and the Black P-Stones, etc. One of the gang leaders from Chicago, I believe his name was Jay Rogers. I don't know if he was from Chicago, but he took the lessons from Chicago that love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice to the Bloods and Crips in Los Angeles. So this thing is all connected in a certain type of way. And one day we're going to do a show specifically on that as well. So I wanted to bring this out and open up with this because I thought that this was a powerful way to introduce the family to the fact that many of the organizations that have touched our lives, if you quote Malcolm X, you quote Islam. If you quote Malcolm X, you quote the culture that Islam brings to America's descendants of slavery in the United States of America. So I want to go to this next book. It's called The History of Conversion to Islam in the United States, Volume 2, The African American Renaissance, 1920 through 1975 by Patrick D. Bowen. Now, there's a reason why I pulled this book up, because I have a book myself on the movement, and I'll pull that up in a second. And this author, he cites my works about 6 different times in this paper. So I get to boast a little bit. This book right here is very, very powerful. But I want to read what Patrick Bowen has to say in his introduction. He says, starting around 1920, certain strands of African-American folk culture were blended with orthodox Islamic knowledge, Black nationalism, and various forms of esotericism to create a powerful and complex wave of Islamic movements. Over the next 50 years, literally hundreds of thousands of African Americans became aware of and interested in the notion that Islam may have been their, quote, original religion. Tens of thousands went beyond mere interest and embraced Islam outright. And hundreds of Black Muslim leaders, writers, and artists took it upon themselves to develop, articulate, and shape the meaning of Islam for the broader African American community. The diversity and abundance of these Islamic currents was so great that the present book refers to the period between 1920 and 1975. He had to condense it as the era of the African American Islamic Renaissance, which he abbreviates AAIR. So this is a copy of the book that I wrote back in 2011, Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple of America, the movement that started it all. This book, can be found in a lot of prisons, all over the United States of America. It was one of the reasons why I wrote it, to be honest with you. And I wanted to challenge some of the prevailing notions about the Moorish movement based on a lot of the tomfoolery that you see out here with people that call themselves Moors. Prophet Noble Drew Ali was into Americanism. He was just trying to tie us back into an ancient lineage to show that you are not these socio-political constructs that these races legislate to keep you down, but that you trace yourselves back to a lineage of people, a nation, and nation ties in etymologically with the term ethnicity. So you see Prophet Noble Drew Ali always flying the flag. This picture was taken January 8th, 1928. In his office, you see Prophet Noble Drew Ali standing in front of a full American flag. I said this on the last show. Prophet Noble Drew Ali let it be known that this movement should not be confused in any way with any Back to Africa movement. We are Americans, and I'm gonna, as I go along, I'll show some of what this man was doing. I'm not gonna read this whole thing, but I want to show how the Chicago Defender, the Chicago's top newspaper at the time, was chronicling the movements that this man was making because they were astounding. And yet this history has been swept under the rug. So when you're talking about Islam in America, when you're talking about culture, Noble Drew Ali is the prime mover. Now there's a part of on this way at the bottom on the second half of this chapter, article published Saturday, December 1st, 1928. It says, Prophet Ali, in all probability, will interview Governor Lynn Small of the state of Illinois. So, this is obviously, if I'm not mistaken, before that election of 1929. But this shows just how powerful this man was in Chicago and I may just do a series on the whole Moorish movement. I've been saying I was going to do that for months. Here's another one. The Moorish leader attends inauguration of governor. So, you know, this is when Lewis Emerson becomes governor, and Noble Drew Ali goes to Springfield, Illinois on January 14th. And, you know, they have a discussion about the Moorish movement, about Greater Chicago in and of itself. Prophet Noble Drew Ali was out there celebrating and being celebrated, these political leaders, and the fact that the Moors, Islam helped elect some prominent members into Congress and local seats like the 2nd Ward Alderman. Birthday of Moorish leader is celebrated. Again, this is the Chicago Defender, Chicago's prominent newspaper. And I think it's imperative that we see the other side of ADOS history. And this is why we're doing this show. It says a number of prominent men, both in the business and public life of Chicago, joined the members in honoring the Moorish leader's birthday. Governor Lynn Small of Illinois, Congressman Oscar DePriest, Alderman Lewis B. Anderson, Judge Joseph Burke, and many others of the country's most noted citizens wired congratulations to the leaders. So this brother was not only getting celebrated locally, he was getting wired birthday congratulations because of the work that this man was doing. And 1, cleaning our people up. 2, teaching them civics in the city of Chicago and wherever Moorish temples were. And 3, basically getting them involved in politics and teaching them how to vote. I'm not going to read through the rest of them. I'm going to just kind of flow through them. Here we have Prophet Noble Drew Ali, always shown holding up that American flag. Let it be known, this was after his trip from Havana, Cuba, the Conference of the Americas in February 1928. It is said that the Cuban president put that particular hat on Prophet Noble Drew Ali's head, that hat being a Panama. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, for the first time in the history that we know, when it represented our people as a distinct nation of people, in the same way the Jews were recognized as a nation of people before they became a nation state in 1928. These are some of the things that I write in my book as well. Here we see Prophet Noble Drew Ali dressed in a 3-piece suit and Stacey Adams, which it's passed down that this is, you know, that was his favorite brand of shoe. Stacey Adams. Noble Drew Ali was American. You didn't see him walking around dressed in jalabias, etc., etc. If he wore Islamic style clothing, he would still have his shirt and tie underneath, you know, his dress shirt and his tie underneath that. These are just more articles. Again, these are business reportings from one of the temples in Detroit, one of the most prosperous temples. And time permitting, I'm going to bring y'all to a video of the Detroit temple where Cornel West visits that video, because I'm trying to hammer home a particular point with this show. But we see the total financial intake of that temple in that year was $19,458. When I did the numbers to the book, adjusted for inflation in 2011, that came up to, I believe, $250,000. This speaks about Islam in America. This is from pbs.org. I'm going to just breeze through this real quick. When the first Muslims came to the land that would become the United States is unclear. Many historians claim that the earliest Muslims came from the Senegambian region of Africa in the early 14th century. It is believed they were Moors, expelled from Spain, who made their way to the Caribbean and possibly the Gulf of Mexico. It speaks about African slaves making up 10 to 15% of Muslims. I've seen numbers 20%. I've seen numbers as high as 35 to 40%. These are just some of the people that I spoke of earlier. The Congressman Oscar DePriest, that Prophet Noble Drew Ali and this Islamic movement helped to elect to the congressional seat in Illinois. My brother Logic knows the exact district. Here is an endorsement before religious organizations were forbade in promoting political candidates. Noble Drew Ali elect Anderson Prophet. This is Lewis B. Anderson, who became the committeeman, if I'm not mistaken, of the Second Ward, or which I believe is the same as alderman. My brother Logic could correct me if I'm wrong, but he became the alderman or the committeeman after this election. So, I mean, you know, we were making moves. This is Noble Drew Ali, surrounded by Louis B. Anderson to his right, by Oscar DePriest to his left, Judge Honorable Blackwell to the lower left, the state's attorneys general to the lower right. I always forget his name. I never bring it up. Here's a little history I want to run through before I bring my bros in. It said, this is from a book called The History of the Conquest in Spain by the Arab Moors, because we had Islam here in the Americas before the United States of America becomes a polity, basically. And it says, when the Moors were driven out, thousands took refuge in the south of France, who, abhorring the Roman Catholic persecutions, became Huguenots. And that of these many immigrated at a later date to South Carolina. This was important to me as I did research, because I would ask my mother about Moors, and if she had ever heard that name in South Carolina. And she expressed to me that my grandmother, Bessie, may Allah bless her soul and may she eternally rest in peace, used to say that we were Moors from South Carolina. But my mother says she always figured that this was just another last name of ours. So she never really paid it no attention until I brought it back up and started to get into it. This is from a book called Bridge to Light by Kathleen Onge. It reads, in 1539, the first ever land crossing of the U.S. was completed by Azinmori, a Muslim Berber. In 1654, English explorers reported a colony of bearded people in North Carolina who called themselves Moors and dropped to their knees to pray while working silver smelting operations. In 1670, Turks and Moors were excluded from slavery by the Virginia National Assembly. I'm not going to read all of that. I want to get into how some of these Muslims become Christians as early as the 1700s, even as early as the 1600s. This is from a book called Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America, a genealogical history by Donald Neil Yates, page 148, originally published in 1949. Speaking of the Jews and Muslims, it says, all of these were at least publicly Christian due to the South Carolina Election Act of 1721. This, quote, defined the voter as a free, white, Christian male, 21 years of age, who owned 50 acres of land or paid 20 shillings currency, $25.50 in taxes, and had lived in South Carolina for at least 1 year, end quote. The result of such a law would be to prompt most persons of Jewish or Moorish or Muslim ancestry to be circumspect about practicing their faiths, to say the least. I have so much information that I could really get into all of this, but like I said, I'm just breezing through this so I could bring my brothers on and they could share their piece. But I want to get into this. This is from a book, Racial Classification and History, edited by E. Nathaniel Gates, 1997, published in page 161. It reads, a 1667 Virginia Act declared that the baptisms of slaves doth not exempt them from bondage. 3 years later, Virginia declared that free blacks who were baptized were to be incapable of any such persons of Christians, white indentured servants, but yet not debarred from buying any of their own nation. So this gets into early American history. The book, The Invention of the White Race by Theodore W. Allen, he really, really goes into this history. So I'm going to skip the next part. But he says, clearly conversion did not create full equality for blacks. I'm going to get into a little bit of that later. It reads, in 1682, Virginia again attempted to settle the whole problem of race and religion. And that year stated that all Negroes, Moors, mulattoes, or Indians who and whose parentage and native country are not Christian at the time of their first purchase of such servants by some Christians would be converted when brought to Virginia, but that would remain slaves for life. Africans in Virginia after 1682 were presumptively slaves no matter what their religion or heritage. Color and ancestry condemned people to lifetime servitude. In criminal law terms, After 1682, Africans in Virginia received a lifetime sentence solely because of the race and religion of their parents. So this is the laws of Virginia, 1748. It speaks to some of what that article was referencing. This was Title 9, which says Act 9 of that, or Title 9 of that act, and be it further enacted by the authority aforesaid that no Negro, mulatto, or Indian, although a Christian or Jew, any Moor, Mohammedan, or other infidel shall at any time purchase any Christian servant. So what was the difference between a Negro and a Moor? In those days, the Moors practiced Islam. You scroll down, you see the other thing that I have underlined portion. It says, and if any person having such Christian servant shall marry with a Negro, mulatto, Indian, Jew, Moor, Mohammedan, or other infidel, such servant shall thereupon become freed of all service then due to such master or mistress. So basically, you couldn't own white people. And I'm going to close out with this. The U.S. Supreme Court sees Prophet Muhammad as one of the greatest lawgivers. What many don't know is that there is an image. This is not how Prophet Muhammad looked according to the historical records, and we may get into some of that later. But Prophet Muhammad is along with, I believe it's 18 other lawmakers, including Prophet Moses, Hammurabi, Confucius, Napoleon, and John Marshall, right, as some of the greatest lawmakers in history, and they are on a freeze at the United States Supreme Court. So Islam has its hands on the culture of everything that we do, and I wanted to get through that. I see my brother Grim is in the building. Shout out to my brother Grimmy Yarnell, one of the original team. I wanted to get through that because I wanted to let people see, hear from the text, from the historical references, how Islam has helped to shape. Thomas Jefferson had a copy of his old Quran. I mean, there's so many different places that I could go with this. So I didn't want to be too long-winded with it. I hope I wasn't. I think I was. I still got about 20 more slides that I could share. Like I said, I could go on for 2 hours on this topic alone. I want to bring my bros in real quick. My brother Logic got his screen pulled up. So first, family, my brother Grimmy Yarnell is on. Shout out to my brother Grim. He is one of the original team back when we was calling ourselves the Supreme Team. So thanks for coming on, brother. I want you to go in. I'm going to let Brother Logic come on, and then I'm going to let Brother Ali come on and give his breakdown. And then I want you to just round things out with the information that you have, beloved. All right, Brother Logic.
Yes, yeah. That was some good information. I saw some things in the chat that I want to address real quick. Mm-hmm. Understand what we're doing right now. This is just, we are focusing on the historical information, the facts that are connected to the actual history and the cultural impact of these different religions. We're not going to just talk about, stay tuned for those shows. We're going to talk about the historical aspects of all of these different religions in America, in ADOS culture. So some people within here saying that, why are we glorifying this and glorifying that? We're not, I'm personally not here to glorify anything. I just want to say this because I know religion is always a touchy subject. I personally, am coming from a historical point of view tonight, right? And I personally believe you, as an American citizen, you have the religious right to take part in whatever religious and spiritual expression you want to. But for the intents and purposes of explaining the ADOS story through religion and culture, we're going to go over several of those tonight, right? So if you have a personal disagreement with a particular religion, keep it to yourself. This is an academic thing. So if you can't come into this with your intelligent mind and understand the historical and academic appreciation of this, then you probably want to tune into something else, because we don't have time for that. We're here teaching up our story, and whether you like it or not, it's our story. Islam, if you understand how this brother that said lineage matters is his handle, or lineage first is his handle.
Yeah, I'm gonna get at him. But go ahead, bro.
And he's talking about, you know, what's wrong and what's right about the Moors and this. All he's really talking about, I know where he's getting his miseducation from, right? He's one of these, the destruction of Black civilization regurgitators and parroters. And that book is filled with incorrect information. And it don't really matter, because you can't ignore, good or wrong, the impact these things have had on who you are today. Whether it was good, just like you might not like and disagree with Christianity, it has had an impact on the culture today. These are actual facts through gospel, through church services, and that going, the values from that religious system being taught to you as a child in your upbringing. It's a part of who we are today. So you don't have to like it. It's our story. And we're here to talk about our story.
He's trolling, bro. Hold on. Lineage first. This is what I'm going to do. I just put an offer in the chat. So I'm going to make an offer to you right now, because I've read all of your comments. And if you don't know the historical information about Islam, you don't know what you're talking about. So what I want to do is I want to offer you a challenge. You could come on a show with me tomorrow afternoon around 4, because we're doing the 13th show tomorrow with Sister Cynthia, tomorrow night with Sister Cynthia and Brother Arthur. So if you would like to come on, oh, she's a female. It doesn't matter. If you would like to come on tomorrow and show and prove that the Moors were involved in the transatlantic slave trade, that Islam did all of these things that you put in the chat, I'll be sure to oblige, because before this show is over, I'm going to hold up my resources and just simply show and prove. So go ahead, Brother Logic, go ahead. I just want to let this person know, if they want to come on tomorrow with me around 4 or 5, they could come on, but they better come correct, because I got counters to anything that they can bring.
He looks frozen. I would just, he's frozen right now, but what I would just add is that not only has Islam influenced Black American culture, but like you mentioned, it influenced the so-called founding fathers, man. There are articles on this stuff about, there's a whole book that came out called Thomas Jefferson's Quran, Islam and the Founders. You know, the fact that you have this statue in the Supreme Court, the reason that the statue is in the Supreme Court is because they know that the Prophet Muhammad, through the Constitution of Medina, was one of the first people to put in place an actual constitution that dealt with some of the principles that you see in our constitution today. So that stuff definitely influenced the so-called founding fathers in terms of our American jurisprudence and everything else. I just wanted to add that, but Brother Logic is back.
Yeah, so even when we go historically, right, when we talk about the formation of this country, I'm going to keep this very connected to the native Black experience and the formation and influence on American history. And when this country gains its independence, the first foreign country that is a non-Christian nation that gives it aid and amnesty and assistance, it's a Muslim country, and we're talking about the Empire of Morocco.
That's right.
The first treaty, the oldest treaty, and the first treaty that America made was with a Muslim country. So the Muslim relationship with America is old as the country itself. So you can't ignore that fact and say that there is no Islamic connections and there is no Muslim impact and cultural significance in American history.
That's right.
So you have to understand that. And then if you understand where most of the slaves during the slave trade came from, there was a lot of Islamic families who were traded and was forced into this system. It's a natural fact. They didn't cease being Muslim because they came across the ocean. So they came from Muslim families and they came here, just like they came from families that practice other cultural experiences, which we were going to get in later on in the show too. So just understand that that's a part of everything. And we're going to tell more of the story on how things got to where they're at now.
Indeed.
But real quick, before you go in, Brother Logic, and do your presentation, brother, shout out to my brother Grim. Unmute yourself, bro. Introduce yourself to the family. This is one of the original team right here. And if you wanted to speak to anything that that was said so far, just briefly, and then I want you to come in after Ali goes in and give your presentation or whatever you got to say, brother.
Oh, peace. Holla at your boy. Hey, man, it's so good to see the gods, man, and all in the same room, man, spiritually. I mean, I heard everything, brother, man. I just want to say this, right? Islam, right? I approach everything from a mystical aspect. And this is the message that, I would like to give to the ADOS community and the people who came into the body of knowledge and into the situation of being an American descendant of slavery, as far as the information, given by Antonio Moore and Sister Yvette. Now, I'm not going to be too long, but I'm going to say they've done an excellent job, and you brothers are doing an excellent job in bringing in the facts, the statistics, the law, the politics of this thing. But there's also a spiritual aspect to us being ADOS, and a spiritual aspect of how and why we, the ADOS community, we're not talking necessarily about the African immigrants, the immigrants from the islands, so on and so forth. But it's a reason that the American descendants of slavery are going through what they're going through in this country. And it's not only asset based or class based, but it's also based upon certain spiritualities and certain principles that's alive and awake in the universe, being the reason that we going through this. And to make a long story short, or to make a short story even shorter, is that we are going through what we are going through because the ADOS people in this country are the seeds of a whole new spiritual world. And we're going to bring into existence. We probably can't see it now, but we have already brought into an existence a whole understanding of the way people look at life and humanity right now. And I just want to address one more thing. Y'all talked about Thomas Jefferson. Now, not only did Thomas Jefferson have in his possession, right, the Quran of Mecca, but he also had in his possession a book that was written, and y'all help me out because I'm having a brain freeze right now. But this book was called the oh goodness gracious. It was written by we talk about it all the time, brothers.
I can't. I'm drawing a blank as well.
What you talking about? The Olivet joint?
No, not Olivet, but it's But anyway, it'll come back to me. I don't want to hold up the time. But this book was written talking about how our people were the original people of the planet Earth. Now, listen to this. Napoleon had the book translated from French. I think it's like Echoes of Nations or something about the ages or something about that. But when I get off, I'll look it up. But Thomas Jefferson, being a slave owner, knew exactly who he had in his possession as far as who and what and where we come from. So he didn't only have that Quran, he had that book explaining where we were, but he had the book banned in the United States of America, but he had certain copies of it translated from the French into English so they can give it to some of the people in their society or their secret society or circles, but we'll get into that later. So that's all I wanted to say.
Definitely. Yeah, brother Logic.
Yeah. So, we could really take this thing so many directions, man. There's so much to teach about this thing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pivot to what I got to say, but I wanted to stay on this Islam thing for a little bit longer because because when we're talking about historical stuff, right, there's the Islamic piece to the puzzle is a really, really big piece. And I think it's overlooked. And I don't know how it gets overlooked because it's such a huge piece to the American story. But we'll come back to it. I want to play something that, so without, I think that these major pieces have to be looked at, right? And a piece that has been long overlooked and hidden for so long, but has in recent years, and I say the last 5 or 6 years, 3 or 4 or 5 years, has been emerging quite rapidly. And this awakening, Brother Grimm was talking about a spiritual awakening taking place, and it's a reawakening, really, because it's deep down in our blood and our DNA and in our lineage anyway. It's just manifesting itself. And this is people may refer to it in many different things, but it's really ancestor worship, right? And we got spiritual systems that people call hoodoo, and it's called voodoo, and it's all historical, ancestral folk religion and folk magic. You know, people have been calling it, when modernizing the way you speak about it today. But I'm gonna play a little short clip of something to kind of introduce you to the history of it, because you may think this sounds strange when you hear people talk about it. You hear people say things like Orisha, and you hear Beyonce talking about Oshun and Yemiya, and hear people saying that they building altars, and this may sound strange to you, and you might be like, well, that ain't us, and that's where they get that from, because all you used to is Christianity. And I'm gonna go to a couple of.
Damn, he froze. He froze on my end.
Yeah, he's froze. You want to jump in real quick until you come back?
Let me say this, just on Islam. This article I have here talking about Islam and the founding fathers. This is a very interesting piece. Let me just read this real quick till he gets unfrozen. When the American Constitution was ratified in 1787, the founding fathers decreed that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. In 1783, George Washington, the first president of the United States, stated that this is what George Washington stated: the bosom of America is open to receive the oppressed and the persecuted of all nations and religions, whom we shall welcome to a participation of all our rights and privileges. They may be Muslims, Jews, Christians of any sect, or they may be atheists. When it came to workers, he judged people based on their character, allegedly, as opposed to their creed. This is another thing he says: if they are good workmen, they may be of Asia, Africa, or Europe. They may be Muslim, Jews, or Christians of any sect, or they may be atheists. John Adams, the second president of the United States and the vice president, described the Prophet Muhammad as one of the world's sober inquirers of truth, alongside such figures as Confucius, Socrates, and Franklin, and he cited him as a model of compassion. Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, who owned the Quran, when it came to law, Thomas Jefferson insisted upon being universal. He opposed the use of Jesus Christ. He opposed the use of Jesus Christ and other synonyms in bills, since it implied a restriction of liberty defined to the bill of those professing his religion only. He specifically stated that the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, which was in 1786, was written to comprehend within the mantle of his protection the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Muslim, the Hindu and the infidel of every denomination. Speaking of the Constitution 1780, Massachusetts Governor Chief Justice Theophilus Parsons affirmed that it afforded the most ample liberty of conscience to deists, Muslims, Jews, and Christians. But let me just go back real quick, because something that George Washington said to me goes towards helping to build an ADOS case for reparations. When George Washington says that the bosom of America is open to receive the oppressed and the persecuted of all nations and religions, whom we shall welcome to a participation of all our rights and privileges, whether they are Muslims, Jews, Christians of any sect, whether they come from Europe, Africa, or Asia. This here is a direct, the institution of chattel slavery is in direct opposition to what he's saying in this particular quote. Direct opposition. So if this, which is what he's saying, is actually in line with the Declaration of Independence, that all men was created free and equal, if these things were supposed to be the cornerstones in terms of the principles that this nation was built upon, then the institution of chattel slavery, again, just from this alone, and I know I've mentioned the Declaration of Independence on a couple of occasions, tells you that these people were wrong with this institution of chattel slavery. So this is just another bullet inside of the argument against reparations. Is the brother unfrozen?
Yeah.
All right. You can go ahead. I was just trying to take up some time.
No, you good. So I just want to play this and to introduce you to what I'm gonna try to talk about a little bit, right? Hold on. Here we go.
Let me start this piece by stating my stance on the hoodoo tradition. It has always been and will always be an African practice. The amalgamation of diverse West African cultures.
You can't hear it?
Cultures that were forced.
Can you not hear it?
Yeah, I hear it, but I hear it echoing. Am I the only one hearing that?
Everybody should mute, I guess. Them are you the only one hearing it?
Yeah. Did you hear it?
Let's try it now.
I didn't hear. I wasn't hearing it mute. I mean, I wasn't.
All right, go ahead. Let's see. Yeah, some in the chat they saying it's an echo.
Let me start this piece by stating my stance on the hoodoo tradition. It has always been and will always be an African practice. The amalgamation of diverse West African cultures that were forced to work together against a common enemy is at the very core, root, and fruit of root work and conjure. To oversimplify it into a combination of African, Native American, and European concepts is misleading and unfair to the legacy of the practice. Conjure and root work was our natural way brought with us during the transatlantic slave trade. It served as a protection for slaves suffering all manner of abuse and trying to find a way to cope with their unfortunate circumstances. Yes, African slaves did come in contact with Native Americans and took pieces from their traditions because they knew of herbs that were unfamiliar to us, since we were used to working with different natural items. Yes, after World War I, Europeans moseyed their culture vulture asses over to our practice to add in and take away. But nothing of their influence bears witness to any claim they can make of adding anything of significance to hoodoo besides the Psalms and use of the Bible, which is a forced inclusion into the heritage of root work that we had already created. In the same way that many of us claim no ownership over the sway over the legacy of hip-hop, and white guests to the culture will say hip-hop is for everyone, the same went for conjure and root work. Now, the majority of those who profit from the sale and commerce of not only conjure tools and supplies, but also the practice and legacy of it, are Europeans who have no connection to the origin or generational pass down of this African or African American practice. One of the most famous
It's so important.
You got on mute now, but it was coming through your thing. So, damn man, I wish you could play that little minute again, man, just so we could hear it clear.
You didn't hear none of it?
Yeah, but everything was doubled or something. You know what I mean? I guess see what the audience say. If they heard it good, then we leave it.
I mean, they say it's good. Nick said it's good. BD said much better. I don't know.
All right, cool.
I don't know what that was. I mean,
yeah, that was just he got kicked off. It was creating a loop because he was playing it and his mic was open at the same time, so it was coming through his speakers, and you know what I mean. But yeah, so anyway, I don't know what happened. It looked like he got kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like he got kicked off. But did you want to say anything else, Grim?
Yeah, Grim, while he's coming back in, if you wanted to touch on the hoodoo aspect of it until he gets back on. I think Grim is frozen as well.
Hey,
there you go.
Peace. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Y'all gonna have to excuse me because I'm on my cell phone. Y'all know I've been rolling all day. But well, you know, man, what the brother put out, man, and the clip that he played was excellent. And you know, basically a synopsis on a snapshot of what that brother was playing was that ADOS, we have our own culture, our own traditions that were basically forged in fire, and that we could adhere to some of those principles and some of those sciences to basically better our lives, and these things need to be taken into account because they are part of who we are as ADOS people. And I know that the reparations is the hill that we die on, but it's going to take a whole lot to get to that thing. And some of that stuff is going to have to take place in the spiritual realm and in the realm of embracing and actually practicing the quote unquote African American culture and the ADOS culture. Now, the brother was talking about hoodoo, right? So with that being said, you'll spook a lot of people off, so to speak, quote unquote. However, if you do a quick internet search, you'll see that most of the books that were written about, well, let's talk about what hoodoo is first, and I'm gonna give it back to Where L. Let's talk about what hoodoo is first. The video basically explained it. The clip basically explained it. Well, hoodoo is an amalgamation of the mystical practices of Africa carried over here, reworked and synthesized by ADOS people. So in a nutshell, what they call, particularly like what they would call in New Orleans voodoo, or what they would call it in the Mississippi Delta, and other places, hoodoo, right? These are metaphysical and spiritual practices of the ADOS people. And when you do a search of people all around the world, the Jews, they have their mystical practices that they call Kabbalah or Kabbalah, right? The white man or the European, they have their mystical aspects and sciences that they refer to as what? Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry. Well, the African American of the ADOS has his and her own system called hoodoo. Now, let's differentiate between what they practice and what the hoodoo practitioners and ADOS people, right, practice. Our practices, right, were practical, so to speak, and that these practices were extremely ADOS revolutionary. That when people practice hoodoo, right, it was basically a slap in the face of rebellion against the tyranny and the oppression that was put upon them in the slave trade. Now, let me give you an example. One of the greatest ADOS leaders, one of our founding fathers, or the founding father of our people, the ADOS people, Frederick Douglass, correct? There's a story that they don't tell you about Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, to make a long story short, because I don't want to take up too much time, y'all, but to make a long story short, Frederick Douglass consulted what they call a conjure man, or someone who does conjure, correct?
Correct.
And Frederick Douglass wasn't necessarily a religious man because he always knew that he was getting his backside kicked all of his life, right? So I can't remember the elder name that Frederick Douglass came into contact with, but the elder gave Frederick Douglass what is called a High John root, or High John the Conqueror root, and told him that if he carried it in his pocket, that he would have protection against the overseers, right? So Frederick Douglass was like, I guess, hey, what the heck? Let's carry this root, right? So he carried his root and attribute this. Y'all remember the story about Frederick Douglass beating down the slave master. So Frederick Douglass basically in so many words, attributed the fact that he beat this man and he was never punished for it, and no punishment came to fruition from the High John the Conqueror root that he received from the elder. So I'm gonna say this last thing and then I'm gonna get off. There are people in America of European descent that know the potency and the efficacy of these philosophical, mystical, and spiritual traditions carried on by the ADOS people when the ADOS people forgot the things that our ancestors did on the slave plantation. You know, they make fun of spiritual traditions like the reading of bones. I tell you this all the time, Ali. You want to see this at work? What's the name of that movie I tell you about, Buck and the Preacher?
Buck and the Preacher.
If you watch Buck and the Preacher,
and that Sidney Poitier joint, the cowboy flick with Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte, yeah.
Right. Yeah, Sidney Poitier and Bella. Good movie. If anybody want to watch something tonight, it's an old school 70s movie, kind of black exploitation, so to speak, right? But in the movie, there was the elder that traveled with the community of people who left New Orleans. Now, these people were under this peonage or whatever they call it, this share type system. So they left New Orleans, Louisiana to go west to find freedom. And they sent bounty hunters at these. But with this group of people, there was a conjure man who threw roots and bones to make decisions for the community. But I'm going to leave it right there that these are some of the sciences that we have forgotten. Noble Drew Ali, yes. Noble Drew Ali taught Islam, but Noble Drew Ali taught a specific type of Islam, not a Middle Eastern Islam, but something that was specific to the ADOS community or American descendants of slavery that also has its root in these same types of voodoo systems. Now, I'm going to say this. I remember them brothers on that show, they was going at Tahalka about these things that they discovered about Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Do I got time to go into this real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so basically they found these old articles talking about Noble Drew Ali and the mystical powers, quote unquote, that he was displaying in Newark, New Jersey, and that he was being arrested, that he had been arrested and accused of being a hoodoo man, so to speak. Now, when those brothers were speaking to Taharka Bey about these articles about Noble Drew Ali and the correspondence courses, like, y'all remember, I was like, man, I'm not worried about that. I'm living my life. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? But right. Listening to the brothers speak and some of the things that they were saying in the article that Prophet Noble Drew Ali did, that Noble Drew Ali did, basically resonated with me because I have experience in these things, and I've heard people in the hoodoo tradition growing up that was doing some of the same things that Noble Drew Ali was being accused of in the article. So I was like, wait a minute. And y'all remember I was putting in the inbox all of them different symbols from basically the hoodoo spirituality or religion or whatever you want to call it that has similarities to what the prophet was doing. Whereas Taharka Bey probably was ashamed because he, when the brothers was going in, he didn't really have a proper defense for those things. But when I heard it, I said, me, Way L, and y'all, we have a proper defense of these things because we understand what the newspaper is talking about and what they trying to mock. Now, let's go. The Moors always use this word demonstration. But they say it out of repetition because they hear others say it. But they don't understand what that word means. When you say demonstration, basically back in the day, what the people, the elders, the hoodoo doctors, they would do what is called a spiritual demonstration. Mm-hmm. Y'all follow what I'm saying? A spiritual demonstration of their power. So they would do things. Remember, they accused Noble Drew Ali of eating the nails Well, hell, they had ADOS doctors on the plantation doing the same goddamn thing that these people in the newspaper was accusing the prophet of.
That's right.
Y'all follow what I'm saying?
That's right. This is
You
a
see
part
what
of
Not only that, if pull up the screen, it doesn't just go to Islam. One of the most famous bishops in all of Christianity was a hoodoo practitioner and a conjurer and a root man.
That's right.
We can talk about it right now. So everyone who had a Christian upbringing and who was there should know about this famous man. His name is Bishop Charles Harris Mason.
Before you go on, brother, let me just say we're ending the live stream on Facebook, family. Come on over to YouTube. I put the link in the chat already. So we're going to end the live stream on Facebook. We're probably going to be ending the Facebook live streams maybe within the next 2 shows. So come on over to YouTube and catch the rest of the show, family. Click the like button when y'all come in as well. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Okay, so this is talking about, so let's get a good look at this man, right? Let's get a good look at him, right? And look at what's on his table. Look at what's on his table. And then I'm gonna read. All right, it says conjure. When we talk about conjure and root work is what is being referred to when you hear the word hoodoo. They're talking about conjure and root men and root women and things like that, right? So it says conjure and the black church. So because a lot of y'all may hear hoodoo and you see these things that look like new concepts today, and you be like, "Oh, we ain't about none of that. That ain't no American stuff. That's not no American descendant of slavery stuff. That's something else. That's that African stuff." Well, let me teach you about your own history real quick. Africans in the American South found their link to the ancestors in the special knowledge and the ability of the conjurer. In fact, when the Civil War ended, only 15% of Africans in America were Christians. Come on now. It took the efforts of white Christians and Black African Methodists to evangelize the recently freed population to make them Christians. Consequently, the African people relied on the spiritual visions and sacred talismans of the conjurer. Now, for the purposes of whoever wrote this article, they're referring to these people as still being Africans, but we know better than that as having this education. These are we talking about Americans, right? At this point, right? We talking about Americans, okay? So these are Americans, right? Thus, by virtue, the omnipresence during slave society, conjurers became, in effect, the spiritual leaders of the masses of Black people until the increasing numbers of Christian ministers displaced them during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Indeed, the conjurer and the preacher were often the same person. From the entry Conjurer's Encyclopedia of African Religion, I suggest every one of y'all get that book if you really want to know what your great-grandma was doing when she was telling you, go get this. And we always had these remedies, these homemade remedies for everything. See, if you think back enough, you can remember where you say, yo, the parents, my people down south, they so superstitious, or they had a home remedy for everything. You don't understand where that came from. That is the hoodoo in your lineage manifesting itself, right? So listen to this. So I recommend everyone researching or getting familiar with the Encyclopedia of African Religion, right? This photo is in that book, and this photo is of C.H. Mason, Charles Harris Mason, right? Conjurer and founder of the Church of God in Christ, aka Kojic, currently the largest Black American denomination.
That's right.
Here, Bishop is photographed with the most treasured spiritual objects he found, gnarled and twisted wood to be particularly powerful. Now, let me go back up and let you look at this picture again. The gnarled and twisted wood, and look at Bishop Mason.
See if you could blow your screen up through your browser.
All right.
People need to see. I want to see it. I know you put it in the inbox the other, but I ain't really look at. There you go. Yeah, now just scroll down.
I got you.
All right.
Now let's look at it, right? That's Bishop Mason. Look what he's holding in his hands. Look what's on his table. And if any of you people are from down south, and if anybody in the chat comes from a Christian background, and you know anything about the Kojic religion, this is the so-called the holiness type of denomination, right? And it's the largest denomination.
Church, man.
That's where you catch what they call the Holy Ghost, where they speak in tongues, and you get all of they have the blessed oil, right? All of these things that you think are Christianity are really conjuring and hoodoo. It's conjuring and root work when they laying hands on you. And if you go to a Kojic or a holiness church or a Holy Ghost church, you'll see and feel a different type of energy than in any other kind of church that you go to, right? And you want to know why that difference is. That's because of the preservation of the conjuring and the root work in the African spiritual system that was forced to be smuggled into Christianity. Now, let me read a little bit more before I hop off of this particular subject, right? Just want to read one more thing from this.
Powerful stuff, bro.
This purpose.
Good information.
Wait. This guy had to pull this comment up. Somebody posted, when I tell my apostolic girlfriend about this, her whole family gonna fight me. that is hilarious. And so another thing is a lot of people in the chat saying they went to Kojic churches. So some of them are getting a lesson for the first time about how this church comes into its fruition or its origins, rather, with a conjurer who wasn't necessarily a Christian, but you know, he brought that spiritual system into the church. And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, so basically, right, what black folks had to do is preserve this thing. So black folks had to hide, but the purpose of hoodoo was really for protection. I was gonna go up here and read some more of it, but it gets kind of
revolutionary. That's right.
It was for protection. So Brother Grimion was talking about the Conquering John root that was given to Frederick Douglass. You had not only was it given to other black folks, but white folks had the root work, and the conjuring was so powerful. White folks understood it, and not only understood it, but they wanted it so bad. They saw what it did for us, and they were the number one demanders of the system. So when they were suffering from all kind of skin diseases and burns, the simple stuff we did. So the primary use of hoodoo and root work is for healing. It's medicine to heal you, and it's the use of in certain applications of herbs and combinations of herbs and roots and things of that nature, which they call now home remedies or old down south remedies, right? But this is the hoodoo in you, and that's in your blood. So this the system was so powerful and important, right? They smuggled it in. They smuggled it into the Christianity, and then you get the power from that. And I wanted to go to again. It also was smuggled into the Catholicism, and you see the different effects, and you see the things that reflect the culture. The holy water and divination, Catholicism comes directly from the Orisha, Ifa, and the hoodoo systems, and the things that we preserve, the voodoo, all that is right here in America. And this is a very important part of your American story, because if you really get into that encyclopedia and you really get into the history, hoodoo and voodoo is given the credit for really bringing us through slavery. And if it wasn't for the teachings, the spiritual practices, and the conjuring, but most accounts, they say they wouldn't have made it through slavery. So if you can do a little bit of independent research on your own, and you will see that the power that you are liking to the Kojic denomination of Christ, that's really conjuring and root work that you see going on. And you don't know it because you don't know your history. But we trying to tie you in, and this is your lineage. This is what your great grandparents have preserved for you. This is your birthright. Hoodoo and conjuring, that is your spiritual power. That connects you right to your ancestors.
And I want to say, I just want to say real quick, because brother Muad Al-Khattab asked in the chat, shout out to that brother. He said, can y'all all define a conjurer again? And you had defined it after that. He says, mysticism is a particular sect of some Muslims. It's not a main or even fundamental practice or belief of Islam or Muslims. And I think, and I just want to say real quick, and I want y'all to touch on that, but I think that a lot of our understanding of Islam, and it's a real deep history that I can get into, but a lot of our understanding of Islam comes maybe about 200 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad, where the ulema, which means the council of wise men, started to rewrite certain things. And then after that, you start to get the Maliki schools of thought. So even in this Maliki school of thought even takes hold deeply in West Africa. When I went to the University of Georgia, there was an enslaved Muslim in the South Carolina, by the name of Bilal Ali, right? Some have intimated that he may be the founder of the Uncle Ben's rice. I've seen that. Some people say that that may be a dubious source, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, this man had wrote a handwritten little booklet in Arabic. And I went to the University of Georgia. I sat down, I read all of the commentary, and they took it to the people, the Africans in West Africa. This one guy, he was so intrigued. And the Africans in West Africa was like, that's some devil work. Get that away from me. That's work of the devil. So they was reading it in the Arabic. So there's no one uniform Islam. One Islamic scholar said that Islam was like water. It took the shape of the place that it flowed over. This is why you'll find Chinese mosques dating back to the 700 AD. So if you walked past it, you wouldn't even know that it was a mosque. This is why the temples and the mosques in West Africa look like some ancient mud huts, right? But these are mosques. So there's not this uniform thing in Islam. And this is how you get a prophet, Noble Drew Ali, being an early conjure man in the same way this bishop was. So I just wanted to address that. If y'all wanted to speak to that, y'all could.
Hey, brother, can I read something real quick?
Oh, sure. Wait, real quick, because I don't. Logic, did you have anything else you wanted to read from that link?
I mean, yeah, but that's fine. We can move on. That's cool.
All right, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I mean, if he wanted to address that, that's fine. You know, I'll wait. I just wanted to point out a quick reference, real quick.
I wasn't going to address that. I was going to hit more points on the hoodoo thing, but
right.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm gonna hit on that too, my brother. Check this out. This book right here, I've been reading this book off and on. I don't know if y'all can see it, but this book is called Mojo Working, and I mean it's a history book about hoodoo, and I suggest that everybody, you know, who's interested in this topic that we're discussing tonight, go get it. But I wanna read something, and it ties into what Brother Logic was saying as well, right? I'm gonna read this real quick. Through hoodoo's scope and content will be modified and tailored after emancipation. Hoodoo's function in the slave community included supernatural controlling and community regulation, protecting individuals from harm, like what Doc Logic was saying, stimulating or drawing good fortune. A lot of ADOS people need some good fortune, but its most widely accepted and least threatening function was herbal healing and medicine. Herbal medicinal treatments, the atmosphere of mutual dependence encountered in frontier, colonial, and plantation communities encouraged exchanges of traditional information, approaches, prescription remedies, formulas, herbal, magical, and curative knowledge. The African healing tradition via hoodoo, which is an American system, was so widely accepted among the African American slaves that those who practiced it effectively enjoyed viable reputations and high status among bondsmen and among free blacks, and often among whites, what the brother was saying. And check this out, y'all. One such slave was named Caesar, who was given state emancipation. I'm going to say that again. One such slave was named Caesar, who was given state emancipation by South Carolina General Assembly and 100 pounds per year for the remainder of his life.
Wow.
His ability to cure rattlesnake envenomation, as well as poisoning from ingestions of mercury, earned him the great acclaim as well as his freedom. Talk about ADOS, man. Caesar's snake bite cure could possibly have been derived from information mutually shared by African and African American indigenous communities. In other words, ADOS. Certainly, with large number of venomous snakes in Africa, Africans were familiar with natural ailments and snake bites in their homeland. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Powerful.
And I want to touch on the whole white people thing. And we ain't being no haters, but you know, and we talk about this all the time, where those people don't believe in Christianity no more in large numbers. The people in power are still trying to push that, but those people are leaving for alternative spiritualities and systems. And a lot of European American people or white Americans in this country are turning towards conjure and hoodoo created by our ancestors on the slave plantations. And they've learned our systems, and they've written more books about it than our people. I just wanted to bring that up, brother.
What year was that emancipation, brother? Did it say which year?
Let me see. I don't think they said, but I can find out. Well, let me see.
I wanted to read.
It doesn't say, brother, but I'll get the research back to you.
All right.
I want to read this piece in conjunction with that, because I really want, since the bulk of our people come through Christianity, I don't think they understand what they really have come through. And I want them to get this history tonight. So I want to read this. I'm not going to bring it up. I'm just going to read it. It says, one of the biggest misconceptions that exists about root culture, aka black culture, aka hoodoo, in the Hoodoo Heritage Month post about love binding work, this person who wrote this article mentioned a period where black people began throwing at cursing at one another and to survive the times which were desperate. This gave the words hoodoo, root working, and conjuring negative associations, and turned into the stuff only the ill intention, mean-spirited, or downright evil would endeavor, right? So what this is basically saying is that there became a time where they started to look at this thing in a negative way. Meanwhile, at the time when racism and terrorism were at its heights in the 20th century, black churches proliferated despite horrific attacks against them. Black churches were anchors within black communities all over the United States. And for many, going to church was more about community than it was about being beholden to a foreign religious indoctrination. Now, however, most churchgoers were careful about calling what they did that to help others or others to help themselves or others hoodoo, etc., right? Or conjuring and everything like that. Instead, they called it work, the Lord's work, or spirit work. And so you always hear that, right? So this is the story of how that happened. When it became dangerous to do what was natural to you, you had to come up with code words and call it something else. So you had to look like you. So we don't understand that we were pretending to be in Christianity And then now we done pretend for so long, we're actually thinking Christians now, right? So we use the Christian system and the Christian allowance because they allowed us to gather there and meet there. We used it as a dwelling for spiritual power while we conjured the energy and protection of our ancestors. But then we would have to switch code and go back to doing church stuff whenever they would come on the scene.
That's right.
So we wouldn't call it conjuring anymore. When after the emancipation of slavery, things got really violent after Reconstruction. So we wasn't calling what we was doing hoodoo and stuff like that because that could get you killed. So we was saying we doing work, we doing the Lord's work, we doing spiritual work, and it just made it seem like you was still doing some Christian stuff, but that's not what we were doing. He said what must be understood here is that the work itself, no matter what or how it was referred to, did not change. And more profound example of this is the fact that most men who became preachers were themselves root doctors, root workers, and conjurers of hoodoo tradition. One such man would found one of the largest black church denominations in the country. For more information on that, you can read Yvonne, it's a French word, book, Black Magic, Religion in the African American Conjure Tradition. So that book again is Black Magic, Religion in the African American Conjuring Tradition. And you can hear about all of and that's a very good historical book, and it teaches, it documents all of the famous preachers and pastors and bishops and deacons that you know, but they were conjured, they were conjure men, and you didn't know that. But they the ones who had the power. And so then you have white pastors who, like Benny Hinn and all them, what they're pretending to be is people who have the power of the conjure. Right. So when they think that they can pray and heal you, all of that is
lay hands on you, and
that's not Christianity.
It's not.
The Holy Ghost running and shouting and falling out. Those are that's an African carryover. Yeah, those are African carryover plantation. Those possessions. You know, in those systems, we call it, like if you go into the Orisha system or the Ifa system, they call it possessions. You being mounted by the deity of the Orisha. They ain't have nothing like that in the original Christianity at all. Ever. Right. And the whole thing about
Protestants and Lutherans and Catholics that came over here, they wasn't doing none of that. That's not the Christianity you got. So you got to do the history and understand how that got there.
So check this out. People will go to the Bible and say, "No, you're wrong," and they would show you Pentecost. I believe that's in the book of Acts, where everybody was in there and they say they were speaking in tongues, blah blah blah. Yeah, and they'll tell you were wrong. But if you look at the context of the Pentecost, that wasn't so much spirit possession. That was just basically the fact that you had different people of different nationalities that spoke different languages. And they said that a spirit came upon them where they didn't, where they were able to understand each other, but it didn't have anything to do with the Holy Ghost or the spirit possession that's practiced today in apostolic and Church of God in Christ or denominations, in Baptist denominations, and in a lot of African American churches. And I'm gonna say this last thing. Also look up what is called the spiritual churches. You know, the spiritual churches to this day basically practice like a depth chamber type of systems, you know, where they intercede on behalf of people, like spiritually and things of that, using the power of the saints and so on and so forth, and things of that nature. But the spiritual churches, these spiritual churches of New Orleans, they basically have their root in these hoodoo slave systems that were carried over after the emancipation. Catholic Church, for example. I'm gonna say something. The Catholic Church will tell you that this stuff is evil, it's bad, it's wrong, it's satanic and demonic as far as like ancestor worship and ancestor veneration. But if you look up a holiday called St. Joseph Day or the Feast of St. Joseph, they set up their own ancestral altars. They put, right where they'll put their fruits, they'll put drinks on the altar, they'll put vegetables, they put little snacks and cakes and cookies and stuff like that. But they would turn around and tell, I'm gonna talk. Yeah, but they'll turn around and they'll tell the black man or the descendant of slave who practice hoodoo, who sets up an ancestral altar to mama, papa, grandpa, daddy, and mama, that's demonic, because they put candles on the ancestral altar and give it offerings. But they do the same shit in the Catholic Church.
Yes, they do.
Right.
Yeah, brother Ali.
Yeah. I just wanted to read something that really touches on what y'all are speaking on right now. Part of it is about Islam, and part of it is about hoodoo and conjuring. This is from a book that was published in 1842 called The Religious Instruction of the Negroes in the United States by a man named Charles Colcock Jones Sr., 1842. So let's look at what he says here. In this particular chapter, he's talking about the moral and religious condition of the slave Negro population. Ignorance of the doctrines and duties of Christianity is prevalent among the Negroes. Their notions of the supreme being, of the character and offices of Christ and of the Holy Ghost, of a future state, and of what constitutes holiness of life, and are indefinite and confused. Some brought up in a Christian land and in the vicinity of the house of God have heard of Jesus Christ, but who he is and what he has done for a ruined world they cannot tell. The Mohammedan Africans, remaining of the old stock of importations, although accustomed to hear the gospel preached, have been known to accommodate Christianity to Mohammedanism. God, say they, is Allah, and Jesus Christ is Muhammad. The religion is the same, but different countries have different names. Let me go to this other piece that's speaking on hoodoo. This is very interesting. Hold on a second. Let me just find this piece. Oh, it's the next page, 128. All right. We're talking about the Negroes again. Intimately connected with their ignorance is their superstition. They believe in second sight, in apparitions, charms, witchcraft, and in a kind of irresistible satanic influence. The superstitions brought from Africa have not been wholly laid aside. Ignorance and superstition render them easy dupes to their teachers, doctors, prophets, conjurers, to artful and designing men. When fairly committed to such leaders, they may be brought to the commission of almost any crime. Facts in their history prove this. On certain occasions, they have been made to believe that while they carried about their persons some charm with which they had been furnished, they were invulnerable. They have on certain other occasions been made to believe that they were under a protection that rendered them invincible, that they might go anywhere and do anything they please, and it would be impossible for them to be discovered or known. And fine, to will was to do safely successful. They have been known to be so perfectly and fearfully under the influence of some leader or conjurer or minister that they have not dared to disobey him in the least particular, nor to disclose their own intended perpetrated crimes in view of inevitable death itself, notwithstanding all other influences brought to bear upon them. Their superstition is made game of by the conjurers and of others like them. They're not only imposed and practiced upon to hurt by these more prominent characters, but by each other more privately by tricking, as it is called, for the gratification of revenge or of lust or of covetousness. A plain and faithful presentation of the gospel usually weakens, if not destroys, these superstitions.
So somebody asked, what is a conjurer and what is conjuring? So I'm going to explain it like this, right? So I could give you a textbook definition, but I really want you to understand it, right? So if you were to if you go to church, right, and you see the powerful, the ones who they say are anointed, the really anointed ministers, who if they can pray for you and they can You can get filled with the spirit. When they pray hard and they sweat, and they can bring about power through prayer and whatnot. What they're doing is conjuring. That's what they're doing, is conjuring. When their ability to magnify the spiritual energy in a room is conjuring. The ability to get in contact with deific power or conjure deity, right? Or ancestor, to conjure the energy, protection, power, wisdom, guidance, whatever it may be, of your ancestors. When they do it, they say it's all just Jesus. They praying to Jesus, but they're conjuring. They're conjuring Jesus. This energy that they call in Jesus, they're really conjuring. They're praying that Jesus heals you. That's conjuring. They praying that Jesus protects you. That's conjuring. Your preacher is a conjurer. Your preacher is a conjure man. When they do the healing, now the difference between conjuring and root work, the root work is what you do with the herbs and the roots and the mojo bags, and that's the healing and all the different things that go with the actual the things, the tools, the instruments you put together, and you do the root work. But the conjuring is really, and a conjure man is really known by his ability to manifest power. So he's a conjurer. So and I want it to be connected to your ADOS history and experience. So when you go into your holiness churches, your Pentecostal, your Baptist, your Church of God in Christ, Kojic churches, and you see they pray real hard, and they're trying to do something. They're trying to conjure. That's what they're doing. They've forgotten how to consciously do it, but the system has been preserved of practice so well that they do it. They get into they doing it subconsciously. They don't know what they're doing, because what they have left is with Christianity. So they only know the Christian side of what they're doing. They don't know that the prayer and the laying of the hands and the things that they have actually been taught, using the blessed oil and praying over the oil and using that to heal people, is actually not a Christian thing. That comes from the African preservation that we call hoodoo. Our culture, that's what that comes from. So the healing power and all that anointing that they talk about is really us. We put that into Christianity.
Can I say something real quick about, like, you hear these stories about, to go back to what where L was talking about as far as the Islamic aspect of it. Like when you hear something about a mojo bag, right? A mojo bag. A mojo bag was a bag of power, like what the brother's saying, conjuring. Basically conjuring, where you taking forces and energy and power that exists around you in the universe, and you invoking the energies of those things on your behalf, whether it's for love, whether it's for revenge, whether it's for protection, whether it's for money, whether it's for wealth. Let me tell y'all something real quick. Some of the richest people around you have used these sciences to advance their damn lives.
That's right.
But then they tell you that it's the devil.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying? But these little conjure bags, I mean, they probably omitted it from today, but I was reading something, and I'm not sure if it's in this Mojo working book, but like the hoodoo doctor would take and put Quranic verses on paper, ball it up, and put it in a bag with buttons and stones and herbs and things like that, and give it to the person who consulted him. This was an extremely ADOS revolutionary against the powers that be system. And the hoodoo doctors, conjurmen, they were both loved and feared on these plantations amongst our people. But like the brother said, we have forgotten these systems. People like Noble Drew Ali, people like Father William Hurley, Bishop Mason that Dr. Logic was talking about. These people come from these systems. And we as a people, we've basically forgotten those systems. Because let me tell y'all something. There's some of these motherfuckers, they need some goddamn proof to put on their head. These y'all enemies, y'all talk about these immigrants and stuff coming over here. The immigrants have the same damn thing that we got. They don't call it hoodoo, they call it obeah. right? And a lot of the stuff come over from over here, went over there. Because a lot of those books that those brothers were saying that Noble Drew Ali was using and stuff in the correspondence courses, a lot of those books became central themes in Caribbean obeah. Y'all hearing what I'm saying? The same thing that they was accusing Noble Drew Ali was in the using the thing, of course, was used by the people in the Caribbean and obeah. So look, let me get back to this. Some of these people need some guy. You know, we always talking about we go talk these numbers with the ADOS, and that's beautiful. We go talk about the reparations. That's great, and that's the hill we go die on, right? But there's a spiritual. Some of these people need to be knocked off their socks. These goddamn lion-ass movie stars who acting like they for us and they ain't against us. These people coming over here, acting like they're us from these other lands. These people, these Hindus, and coming over here that then got scholarships, and then they mess over us when they done with us. Some of these people need to be knocked off their goddamn socks with these spiritual systems. Now you probably gonna say, hey, well, you know, Jesus said this and Jesus said that. Let me tell y'all something. Jesus went up to some dirt, spit in the dirt, rubbed around with a stick and rubbed it on a woman's eyes and healed the woman. So tell me that ain't time.
He's the conjuring man of all conjuring men.
Exactly.
He did the same thing with Peter. Peter cut a man's ear off. And Jesus took the ear, did the same number, spit on it, put some dirt on it, and put the man's ear back on. So and that's the point that I'm making, and that we're trying to explain to y'all tonight, is the stuff that you have been taught is your own, and like it's your own stuff. You don't even know it. It's been taught to you as like it's someone else's stuff. And during that part, right, where I was talking about how it got real violent after the Civil War. So the Christianity was what they gave us, but we used that to trick them. And then it ended up tricking our own selves because of the violence. So that was the only place we could meet and be left alone. And then oftentimes they would tell you, go to your church or you're going to get killed. Get out of here. Go to your church. So the church was a safe haven. But so we had to hide there for so long, and we hid our hoodoo and our ancestral power and our real spiritual power in the church so long and so well that we hid it from ourselves. And what now is the phenomenon of the reawakening of this knowledge, power, and spirituality taking place. So you shouldn't look at this thing. You've been taught that it was demonic and evil for all this time, but this is your stuff. This is your lineage. This is your stuff. This is your birthright, right? And once, like Brother Grimm was saying, once you get back into your connected self and you reconnect all that brokenness, that spiritual brokenness, you will have the power to stop your enemies. You will have the power to be successful and get over those obstacles in your roadblock. And you won't have to be going to, I don't want to speak too harshly and hurt nobody's feelings, but you won't have to be praying to Jesus. You can pray to your grandpa. You can pray to your great-grandfather and get help from your aunties and your uncles that done passed. All those warriors that died during slavery, they waiting right there to help you. They know what you've been going through, and those are your angels, your family members. That's in your blood. You connected to that, and they waiting to help you, but you done forgot about them. And if you go to all other cultures, you go to the Mexicans, they got the ofrenda, where they got their whole family that done passed, and the whole purpose of the ofrenda is that you don't forget them, and you remember them, you keep them alive in memory. But they took that. You go to every culture, they have that. They have their dead people up on the wall. You have they have their family members so that they don't forget, to keep them in memory, and that the spiritual world and the physical world is still connected through lineage, right? There's a spiritual lineage and a physical lineage, but we have been cut off. When we bury our people in the ground, we forget about them in 10 years, and we never talk about them. We don't keep them up. We give them no reference like we supposed to. If our people die and we say some good words, we drink some beer, we pour some Hennessy out, and then we just go on about our business. But if you reverence them, if you still give them that love, they will give it back to you. But you spend all that time praying to other people's ancestors. That's why they have all the power. You pray to
all the people from somebody else's culture, and that's why our culture is dying. So
it's 1,000 places I could go with that, boy. I tell you. I'm gonna be chill a little bit.
The power. What you say?
I said there's 1,000 places I could go with that. I'm gonna be chill a little bit. Grim done brought enough extra fire for everybody tonight. Brother Ali got something pulled up he want to read, and I want to get into something as well that kind of ties in back to the Moorish thing in Islam, and it's all connected. It's all connected. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, this is from a South Carolina publication called The State, an article that was published in 2016 called Voodoo's Heyday Has Passed, but the Gullah tradition still bewitches South Carolina.
I'm Gullah, y'all. My family straight Gullah Geechee. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. So it says here, in the mid 20th century, even the county sheriff was a witch doctor. J. Ed McPherson Sr. specialized in removing spells cast by Dr. Buzzard, Dr. Eagle, and Dr. Bug, and perhaps as many as 20 other local root doctors.
Wait, we got a Dr. Logic on the panel right now. That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead, brother.
It says voodoo's web across this watery county was thick with its high concentration of enslaved Africans and freedmen. So this is something the freedmen were dealing with.
How'd you think they got free and did all that courageous stuff?
And now let me go to something that Grimm said in terms of how we're dealing with some of this trading places a little bit.
But before you do that, you see that blue? I believe they call that I don't want to call it South Carolina blue. I forget, but that blue was used in the South, particularly to sleep paralysis when the hag rides you and you can't move. And
right.
That blue was used to paint the roofs and the windows to keep what they called the hag out. Now, this system also carries over. A lot of African Americans paint their rooms that same color. And I know I painted it, and I didn't even know why I was using that. I seen other people painting their babies' rooms that color and painted my children's room. It wasn't later until I found out that they used that blue to protect our souls from being attacked by what was called the hag.
The sister said it's Hank blue. The color is Hank blue.
Hank blue? Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
They do that in New Orleans too.
That's
exactly.
Right. Now let me show you what the caption says under this man's picture. Roger Pinckney the 11th of Dafusky Island, an author known for his belief in the spiritual tradition of voodoo, shows a home along Hague Point Road with its trim painted Hank blue.
Hey,
my bad. I jumped ahead of it.
There it is.
But it says it's a long time Gullah tradition, Pinckney noted, to keep evil or ghosts out. Ghost, Pinckney says, don't like blue. So that's the caption under the article, and this is the same article that goes into the piece about Dr. Buzzard, Dr. Eagle, and the other guy.
This is our history, y'all. Go ahead, talk to him, Molly. But this is our history, y'all. This is when we talk about being lineage based. You can't talk about your lineage and you don't know your story, and because the spirit comes before the physical. The physical is only there to give evidence that the spiritual exists. So if you don't know your spiritual story, you still can't tie yourself back in, and you don't really know your lineage.
My brother's preaching tonight. That's why we moved this show to Sunday, y'all. We wanted to get into the good church spirit and yeah, go ahead, brother Ali.
All right, so we read this piece about Dr. Buzzard, Dr. Eagle, Dr. Bug, right, and a whole bunch of other ones. So let's just go a little further. It says, so common was it in the Gullah culture of recent generations that writer Roger Pinckney the 11th on this island, the Dafusky Island, recalls hearing the phrase, if you don't shut up, I'm going to Buford on you. Today, the old timers say there's just one root doctor left, Dr. Buzzard's grandson. And today's sheriff, county native P.J. Tanner, said, we very seldom see it or even hear any discussion about it, but it's still there. It's still here. Go further here and see what else they're saying. A 2014 police report was filed by an 85-year-old Beaufort woman who feared her neighbor had put a root curse on her and others, causing them to fall out of their chairs. A year earlier, an unruly woman accused of trespassing in Aiken told a police officer she was going to Beaufort County to get Dr. Buzzer to put a root on him. She told him if he didn't believe in voodoo, you will when Dr. Root gets through with you. So, I mean, this is just like some story. They're giving some stories and stuff like that, some background. So we don't have to go through all of that. I know we want to get more into the history.
Yeah. Now, what I want to do is this, right? And I'll definitely want y'all to come because I did my little piece on Islam. I just got so much stuff, but I do want to. I want to come in with this real quick. I want to read this.
Hey, can I say something before you do that? Not much.
Go ahead, brother.
Just about the Moors, brother. Remember, Madame Blavatsky said that the Moors. Remember when she said something in Isis Unveiled about the Moors conjuring spirits or something like that, and that they was the masters of mystical powers?
I didn't get into Isis Unveiled like that, but I remember her going in on the secret doctrine. But I can't remember.
I think I showed y'all that.
You definitely showed us that. So I remember, but I never got into the Isis Unveiled. I was kind of stuck in her book, The Secret Doctrine, Volumes 1 and Volumes 2. Those two books.
Right. That's all I wanted to say,
but Pete, but what you just said, what I'm about to bring up, what you was about to say, Logic?
No, I was just going to say that just like we took our African systems and hid them in Christianity, when Islam spread throughout Africa, it was more of a political change. It really didn't change the spiritual expression of our people. We just did it, and it is under Islam. That's why when you see the Black or the African Muslims, their whole culture is different than the pale skin Arabs' culture under Islam. If you look at what the African Muslims did, we built the things that we did look very much different than what other people do. So we are the most spiritual people that ever existed. We are the most Christians. We are the most Muslims. We are the most anything. We were the most peaceful Buddhists. Anytime you have a spiritual system and you have African or Black folks, for a lack of a better term, in practicing that system, we become the best practitioners of that thing.
That's right. This book right here, The Archaeology of Islam in Sub-Saharan Africa, it details what you just said about, although Islam spreads through the African continent, much of the spiritual practices and systems were retained. And just like the church here, it's so funny how these things were blended and lost. And you know what I'm saying? As it went on, these things were lost. That's what happened with those systems in Africa. And we let the pale Arabs come in and tell us that it was superstition, et cetera, man. We could really, really go into this. So I want to pull this up because Grimm brought up Madame Blavatsky speaking about the mysticism of the Moor. So this is from this book. Let me share this real quick. All right, this is from a book. Let me get the title of it first. The name of this book is called Masonry and Medieval Mysticism, Traces of a Hidden Tradition by Isabel Cooper Oakley. And this is starting on page 71. And I want to read this. It says, further, we find a curious secret sect existing in Africa, of which Molian gives a most interesting sketch. He calls this sect Les Al-Masori and connects their community with the Freemasons as follows. Now, this book was written in the early, I don't know if I have the date on here. I don't, but I'll pull it up in a few minutes. But this book was written by early Freemasons who were trying to, and I believe Elizabeth Cooper Oakley was one of the rare honorary women Freemasons. I think my brother Grimm could correct me on that if I'm wrong, but she was involved in this project as well. And one of the things that they were doing was traveling across the world to find these different mystical systems that obviously was being practiced in early Freemasonry that we don't find today. So it reads, in Fututoro and among the Moors, there exists a sort of Freemasonry, the secret of which has never been revealed. The adept, Moors are familiar with that in America, is shut up for 8 days in a hut. He is allowed to eat but once a day, FOI, right? He sees no person excepting the slave appointed to carrying him his food. It's funny how they use that term slave all the time when it comes to our people. It couldn't just be a fellow village person. But anyway, at the end of that period, a number of men in masks present themselves and employ all possible means to put his courage to the proof. If he acquits himself with honor, he is admitted. In India today, let me interject, there's a tradition that they have where they take these very young girls and they lock them in these rooms for 24 hours. And no sunlight or anything penetrates these rooms. And as soon as the little girls get scared, they pull them out. But the one that stays the whole time without a peep or whimper of fear, they reverence her. I can't remember. I read that some years back. I read a whole little research article on that. I can't recall who it is, but it's similar in that regard. It says, it continues, the initiated pretend that at this moment they are enabled to behold all the kingdoms of the earth, that the future is unveiled to them, prophet, and that thenceforward heaven grants all their prayers. In the villages where persons of this fraternity reside, they perform the functions of conjurers and are called al-Masuri. One day, Bukhari told me, after attesting the truth of what he was about to say by the most solemn oaths, that being in a canoe with one of these men, there fell such a heavy shower of rain that he would not depart. Yielding, however, to the wishes of the al-Masuri, he set sail. Torrents of rain fell on all sides, added Bukhari, but our bark remained perfectly dry and the favorable wind swelled our sails. I asked this al-Masuri to explain his secret, but he answered that if he revealed it, his brethren would infallibly destroy him. Now, these are some accounts that are coming from West Africa about these conjurers that these Europeans seen do mystical things where a heavy downpour is coming down and one of these brothers, these Moors on this canoe, cast some type of spell and the rain never hits the inside of that boat. It remains perfectly dry. So all of these traditions and all of these spiritual systems we bring over here with us to the United States of America, and all of them become blended. This is why you find Prophet Noble Drew Ali, one of the great leaders of Islam, the founder of quote unquote Black Islam in the United States of America, early on in his career as a conjure man, as a hoodoo man. And we got testimonies that I could pull up if we wasn't approaching, such a late.
And let me just say this, just to add on, and just to give some context to what as to why we're doing this. I want the people who believe that they're Christians in our ADOS group to understand that we descend from the inhabitants of Africa, not the current inhabitants, but our ancestry ties us back to that continent. The fact of the matter is, those of us who acknowledge the transatlantic slave trade will have to acknowledge that these people weren't Christians that were brought here. So if we as ADOS are interested in dealing with truth, then we have to deal with that truth. Christianity, like Dr. Logic read the piece, by the time emancipation happened, maybe 15% of the freed population would consider themselves Christians. Now it's probably most Black Americans, but at the time, it wasn't like that. And the fact of the matter is, you got to understand that the West Africans brought here, that our ancestors, they weren't Christians. There were no West African Christians. That's just an actual fact. At that time, during the transatlantic slave trade, there was no West African Christians. Now, some people will argue that Christianity was in Africa, it was in Ethiopia and Egypt and all that. Maybe there was some form of Christianity there. Right, we know that there was something in Egypt early on. We know that there was something in the kingdom of Aksum, right? But that has nothing to do with us. The West Africans weren't that. So our ancestry is not Christianity.
Facts.
Talk to see people when you start going down this line, right? You have to understand what we're doing. We are going back and restoring the lostness that has put us where we are today. So you might, if that road may feel uncomfortable going there, because you're going to have to shed a lot of the stuff that you've been put on you, and a lot of that stuff don't sound good. But the brother Ali is 100% right and exact, and we read the numbers. So it was only about 150,000 of us out of 4 million that was saying that they was Christians, and all of them, if not all of them, the majority of all of them was forced into it, right? It was a foreign thing to them. It was a foreign thing. So it was not what was natural to us. So when we start talking about what is in our lineage naturally, you're going to go down to what we talk about. It's conjuring. Whether it, and we've hit it in every area, whether it's in Islam. The brother Abbott spoke quite well, and he hit y'all with a lot of different information quite fast too, and hit it from every angle.
I got a lot more that I couldn't even get to.
When you talk about how when you separate us, our people, and then you look at the religion with us in it and with us out of it, there's something special about it that only we possess.
That's a
With
fact.
the conjuring ability and the conjuring and the root work that we have put into everything. Our ancestral, what they call, and that's where the term magic even come from. Whatever we do is magical, right? We got magic as a people, and they don't want to talk about that. They don't want us to talk about that. We used to get killed for talking about that, but it's a real thing, or they wouldn't have killed you.
That's right. I want to read real quick because Ali brought up about Christianity based on what Brother Logic read earlier. About only 15% of the people at that time identified as Christians. And Noble Drew Ali said this, because I think that this is important for people to hear, right? He says that the world, this is from the Circle 7, his little pamphlet. He said that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa, there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. He said, we as a clean and pure nation, descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and defined founders of the first religious creed of the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. And that's just all facts. When you look at Prophet Muhammad, and you look at his family, according to the contemporaneous documentation, he was what you would call a black man. The original Arabs look just like us. That's a whole nother 2 hours that I could just give a presentation on that alone. This is why the depictions are forbidden in Islam, because if you draw the Prophet Muhammad according to the contemporaneous records, it reveals how he looks, and he looks just like one of us. And this is just a fact.
And it's not far-fetched. The same way that Christians will argue that Jesus had the feet of burnished brass and hair like lamb's wool and all that stuff, him and Muhammad were from the same areas, man. They were from the same area.
That's a fact. That's a fact. So that's another debate. I was hoping that that person, I forget her name, was still in the chat, so we could get into a little debate set up tomorrow, because a lot of people don't know the Islamic side of the story. Islam influences a lot of what goes on today in the United States of America from its inception. The houses of consciousness that have sprung up from my calculation due to what Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought, because out of the Moorish Science Temple of America comes the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam taught the teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish Science Temple of America up until, I believe, 1951. Then they changed the doctrine up and start talking about some man named Yaqub, the big head scientist that's watered down the genes of the black man to the brown man to create the red man, then the yellow man to the white man. That stuff came later. Their original teachings came out of the Moorish Science Temple of America. And the problem with the teachings of the Nation of Islam is that they're ahistorical. I have treatises that I've penned, my research papers that show that what Noble Drew Ali taught us historically is right and exact. The book that I read from in the beginning, this guy's an academic, a scholar. He cites me 6 times in that book. I'm not trying to blow my own horn. I'm just trying to say that there's an element of our lineage that we can't ignore. It helps shapes us. It brings this particular crew of us together on this show right here and fits into what ADOS is saying insofar as politically, because Prophet Noble Drew Ali was also quoted as saying, one day the European is going to have to pay us back for the work that our ancestors did in slavery and pay off in compounded interest, period. So, I mean, there's this, we could go on for a couple more minutes. I got some more things that I want to share if y'all want to as well. And I know y'all got a couple more things y'all want to go in.
Let me say this, right? This was an interesting exchange I had with someone online where he was talking about the Bible was a historical book. And you have different black Christians who are trying to make the claim that Christianity came out of Africa some kind of way. I don't know how they're making that claim, but it's an African thing, right? I know they're trying to say it comes from Egypt originally, like they took the stories of Egypt and plagiarized them and put them in the Bible, right? This is what a lot of them are saying. And then some are actually saying that it may have started somewhere in Ethiopia or something like this, right? So I'm like, well, if the Bible is a historical book, according to the Bible, the Christianity starts in Antioch.
Antioch, that's a fact. According to its own book.
So no matter how you look at it, it's an import into Africa. It's not something that came out of Africa. So there's no way to flip that.
That's right. That's right. So, and one of the things that I want to do too, I'm going to close it out. I want to play a video before we close it out, I should say. So I'm going to play one of those videos as soon as my brothers make their rounds again. And it is a video that may shock many of you because it has Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King Jr. together in this particular video. And a lot of people haven't seen this video. And there's a message at the end of this. The reason why we did
there was a Dr. King piece you were supposed to read too. It was a very important piece.
Okay, then I'll get to that. But y'all go in, bros.
Hey, can I say something real quick about that whole that Christianity thing that we probably didn't touch on tonight? Is that whole Ham thing, and that Ham myth and their interpretation of that whole Ham myth in the Bible is the very foundation of American Christian racism at this point. I know my image a little dark, y'all. I'm out on the farm right now, checking on these birds. But that being said, that whole thing about Ham in the Bible is the foundation for why these people cannot wake up right now and say, you know what, we were kicking those people ass. We were doing this, man. We need to pay these people reparations. We need to fix this thing. We need to repair the breach. The reason why those people cannot come off that stuff right now is because they believe that we are inherently inferior based upon the knowledge that God gave them. Real talk.
And the camel back on that before you come in, Logic. The curse was put on Canaan. The curse was put on Ham's fourth son, Canaan. And I went through that on one of the other shows, and this was another core historical element of the teachings of the Moorish movement, that we Moors in America, whether we call ourselves blacks, Negroes, etc., were in fact the descendants of the ancient nations of Canaan. The Hamitic curse comes from an Islamic scholar by the name of Ibn Khaldun, who I believe was a Jewish revert. He was one of those pale-skinned Arabs. He started the curse of Ham portion, and then we start to see Islam radically change. Like I could go so deep into that. Go ahead, brother Logic, because I'll just
yeah, you know, like the people saying that they want us to keep going in the chat. So you know, they want us. I mean, and I know that this was going to be a very interesting topic because no one has been talking about this like this, right? And it all makes more sense now that people are coming into their own like ADOSness, right? And people are being reinterested and reintrigued into their own history. And they didn't know all of this stuff. A lot of the stuff we talked about tonight, a lot of people don't know this stuff. And I'm not really coming from a perspective. We can do shows about, you know, really getting into the back and forths of the details of the, like, honestly, you know, like Abbott said, not tooting no horns. Anything y'all want to talk about dealing with religion or anything, we can really go in very deep on it if that's what y'all want, you know. But I don't want to put it in it. But those are touchy subjects, and at the end of the day, I just want to educate and be historically correct with what we do and make sure that it's for the benefit of the group. But
somebody said go till 3 a.m.
We can definitely. A lot of y'all won't be wanting to be into what you into after we done is what I'm trying to do. You know what I'm saying? After we get at that thing, a lot of y'all are gonna be like, man. So,
Dr. Logic, what if I said that Christianity is synonymous with white supremacy?
Then I would go to it and I'd prove it to you. I would say I would go in and prove it. It is Christianity. But see, now you got me going down a path.
We ain't got to touch on that. I was just being rhetorical.
Yo, but if Christianity makes you a better person, then it keeps
if it does the thing
and all of that. Do what you need to do to be a better person. I'm not expecting everybody to be into what I'm into.
That's right.
I just want you to know the true history about the stuff that is going on in America and our lineage, you know. But we can really get into some stuff. But I think, you know, if they want
it. Yeah, brother Logic froze on us.
Well, see,
right. Go ahead,
Logic had the piece that he got from what's the sister that the elder that passed away? When she was breaking down how Christianity and white supremacy were actually
Francis Cress Welsing.
And see, let me tell you something. That was something that I came to just on my studies, man. I never even knew that she said that stuff. It was just based on my research in terms of the history of the Atlantic slave trade going from, and when I say that, I'm not talking about coming to America. I'm talking about from Africa to Portugal first and Spain, and then to America. Because when you read the papal bulls, right, there are 3 papal bulls that are very, very important. We might have mentioned them before. One was called
Dum Diversis.
One was called the Dum Diversis.
Romanus Pontificus.
Romanus Pontificus.
I may be saying that one wrong.
No,
right? Romanus Pontificus, right? And the other one is Ilias Qui.
Ilias Qui, and then there's another one called the Sicut Dudum from 1435. So you have the Sicut Dudum, then you have, which is 1435, the Ilias Qui, 1442. Then you have Romanus Pontifex or Romanus Pontificus. You can say both ways. And then what's the last one again?
Qui.
No. Ilias Qui, Romanus Pontificus, the Dum Diversis.
Dum Diversis, right? So you look up those particular papal bulls, and you see how Christianity is at the root of Atlantic slave trade-ism, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
So to speak. And this is all during the age of discovery, and the doctrine of discovery arises out of these papal bulls, where the doctrine of discovery gives them the religious or spiritual authority to take possession of African lands and Native American lands here in America and all of that kind of stuff. So it's at the root, and in my opinion, it's really synonymous with white supremacy. What they're calling white supremacy to me starts as Christian extremism. But go ahead, bro.
Well, let's go into it, right? So we're going to go into a paper that Frances Cress Welsing wrote. And she said, Europeans seeing human race through race-colored glasses. Beginning in the 15th century, Europeans began to see the world through race-colored glasses. At first, their priests and popes justified the new world as God's law revealed to Christians. By the 18th century, their scientists used their racial lenses to construct racial categories for human beings, which distinct hierarchies based on religion first, ethnicity, and skin color. European slave owners in the colonies created a whole legal system based on race and religion. And by the 19th century, politicians asserted that race was the reason Europeans and European Americans deserve to run the world. So if they one in the same thing, and if it wasn't in the beginning, they made it one in the same thing. And
hey,
we
can I say when you finish, can I say something about Tone and Yvette? I won't bring that home.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You can jump in and say what you're going to say now.
Right. Okay. Beautiful, brother. I appreciate that. If Tone and Yvette is listening, right, or anybody associated with them in close confidence with them, let me tell them stuff, man. All of the work that they did, do they think junk is just scholastic? Do they think that they have not been touched by the spirit of the divine and the ancestors and bringing up all of that information that they've been bringing? That's ancestral. Those people, look, them two individuals have been touched, man, to bring forth the information, and it's undisputable.
That's right. That's right. They've
been blessed. I believe that the spirit of the civil rights movement,
right? The civil rights movement.
I mean, they captured that spirit. Stuff. That's right.
Right. Exactly. The spirit of the ancestors is on them two people, man, to do the work that they do. Who gave them the? Because I mean, look, when those people, when Ali first put me on that information, you know what I'm saying? I was like, this, that, and the other, so on and so forth. Who gives somebody that depth of understanding of the conspiracy, right? That's of the conspiracy that's against our people, from people that look like us, people trying to steal our identity that look like us from other places and other countries, the economics, who that they was able to pull up all of these stats about how deprived of wealth we are in this country. For them to put that together is divine. Now, let me tie that to what y'all was saying about the papal bulls and all of that stuff in simple things. In simple terms, the reason them people don't want to give us reparations is tied into them papal bulls and that philosophy and they understandings of Christianity that black people don't deserve nothing. Because how could you listen to the information and the statistics that Tone and Yvette come up and then deny that these people, our people, the ADOS people, need to be repaired? How could you wake up one morning and not even address these people, act like they don't exist, call them Russian bots? All of that stuff is rooted in this spiritual system that they call Christianity, that black people don't deserve because we're not human beings. We were cursed. Cursed be Canaan. A slave of slaves shall he be. And that's what we fighting against.
And you better believe they viewed us as Canaan. They have that in their Confederate documents.
That's right. And Ephesians 6:12 says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And you know, we Muslims, we know the Bible better than some Christians too. I'm just saying, I ain't trying to toot no
Hey,
no
I got something from the Bible that's real interesting.
Uh-huh.
Me and Where L was talking about this. I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday. Matthew 15, 21 through 28. This is the Gentile shows her faith to Jesus, right? Jesus was a funny kind of dude. Look at what happened. So it says, then Jesus went out from there and departed to the region of Tyre, if that's how you pronounce it, Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came from the region and cried out to him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord, son of David. My daughter is severely demon possessed. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, send her away, for she cries out after us. But he answered and said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshiped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. And she said, well, yes, Lord, yet even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from their master's table. Then Jesus answered and said to her, oh, woman, great is your faith. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that very hour. So did Jesus call this woman and her daughter a bitch? I don't know. I'm just asking.
A Canaanite woman. A Canaanite woman.
That's right.
Canaanite woman is the black woman.
Hey, I think it's quite clear what was going on there.
That's right.
Now look at that. So when we talking about this thing, right? Let's look at how like Christianity has. If you look through a Christian lens, right, you get the words infidel and savages, right? And a lot of people say infidel is a Muslim thing, right? But it comes before Islam, right? And the Christians use the term infidel and savages before the Muslims did. So let's talk about it. Now, in the 16th and the 17th centuries, European conquistadors needed to create a theological justification for their conquest of the Americas and Africa. How could they steal the land inhabited and cherished by millions of indigenous people and not be considered thieves? How could they kidnap and enslave and murder millions of African people and still be called good Christians? How could they annihilate whole nations of indigenous people and not go to hell? Spain and Portugal, good Catholic countries, sought out the wisdom of the Pope, who clarified their Christian duty for them. It's okay to take the land of the infidel, and who does not practice Christianity, because an infidel by definition has violated Christian law. If the infidel protests, it is appropriate to kill him. It's important to enslave someone who is a savage, one who does not practice European culture, to teach the enslaved persons the virtues of civilization. As a matter of fact, you're doing him or her a Christian favor by removing his or her suffering ways. Now, now you got to ask yourself, how did you become Christian again? That just told you how you became Christian. They forced it on you in an attempt to remove you from your sinful ways. So now you get the whole concept that anything that you do is evil. So now you look at your own root working and you're conjuring as demonic, devil worshiping stuff, because you've been forced with Christianity by the sword, because they told you what you was doing was the work of savages and infidels. And if you did or protest and say no, and they did it to the natives when they came over here. the so-called native Indians. And I don't know how they get everywhere around the world, and everybody that they see is an Indian. You're an Indian in Puerto Rico. You're an Indian in India. You're an Indian all the way in America. They just call you Indians wherever they go. Everybody's an Indian. So I don't know how you become an Indian, but they come and they demonize whatever your spiritual system is. And then they make you do what their spiritual system is. So we have to understand the historical connections and how we all got to practice and what we practice. And if we really want to be effective, and like Brother Grimm was talking about, there's something special about this work we're doing when we're talking about this restorative justice, because we have tapped into the energy of our ancestors, and we are working to not consolidate, but we are working to actually resolve the business of our family members and our ancestors. We are actually working with that energy. So now we see in a different kind of result. And if you want, because we're working with that ancestral energy, so you've seen progress where you haven't seen progress before. Why is that? Because we're working with a different energy now than we was working with then. So we working and moving with our ancestors, and that's how we're able to see the same type of stuff that you saw in Reconstruction. See, now this type of stuff that you're seeing now is stuff that you saw during Reconstruction. We working with our ancestors' energy now. You're seeing deconfederatization that should have happened a long time ago. You're seeing statues getting torn down. You seeing reparations, a national conversation. You seeing people coming into their lineage as American descendants of slavery, and they're embracing it and they're using it to get things done politically. And they're using it to fuel their political will. So there's something different. So if you're wondering why things haven't been done in decades ago, it's because we was using the wrong energy. You was praying and doing the wrong stuff. You didn't have the wrong spiritual energy and fuel behind you. But now you see all of that changing, and now you see the progress. So the more we get back to ourselves, the more we get back into the things that we used to do, we will start to see the benefits and the progress that we need. And the proof is in the pudding.
All right, I want to pull this thing together, and I don't want nobody to misunderstand what the purpose of this show is about. The purpose of this show is to show the other side of the history of America's descendants of slavery, the freedmen, the descendants of America's freedmen in the United States of America. You know, we have our issues with Christianity, but we love our people in the Black church. Make no mistake about that. But I think a lot of what holds us back from moving together is our disdain for the other religion. For instance, T.D. Jakes said that he would never sit down with Minister Farrakhan. You'd never sit down and do nothing together with that brother. I remember, I'll give a quick story. There was a sister that knocked on my door one time, and she was handing out some papers. She was like, we're having, I think she said, a revival at the church, and if you want to come through. I was like, sure, sister. I opened up the packet. I was like, oh, this looks lovely. I said, but we're doing something at our temple as well. I would love to have you. I said, I'll attend your event and you attend mine. She said, what do you mean? I said, oh, I'm Islamic, I'm Muslim. We're doing something at our Muslim. Before I could get, oh no, y'all don't do this and y'all don't believe in Jesus. I said, sister, you're wrong. We do believe in Jesus. Jesus is one of the most quoted names in our holy book, the Quran. I said, you've never read it? She said, no. I said, well, I've read your Bible. And that was the back and forth. It was her resistance. I had another story real quick where I was going through a little bad time in my life, me and my family. And this sister was like, she kept saying, Naheem, I want you to meet this lady. She's a prophet in the church, but I know you're not into Christianity, but she's deep. I want you to meet her. I said, okay, sure. So she brings the sister over, and I'm building with the sister. So I pull out my little Circle 7, Noble Drew Ali's little compiled book, and I'm building from Jesus from our perspective. And she's kind of astonished at the information that's coming out, the spiritual information that's kind of different from what's taught in her biblical narrative. In the biblical narrative, when Jesus fasts for 40 days and 40 nights, this is an event where this entity called the devil comes in, this separate entity. But in our circle 7, that entity called the devil is the lower self within. It's Jesus's own lower self telling him to break this promise that you promised yourself that you would do. Cast yourself and turn these stones to bread, etc., etc. So this devil, as we teach in the Moorish science, is nothing but the lower self. There's no devil that exists outside of self. That's the way we teach it. And so me and the sister sitting there building, and she put up her wall real quick. But the more we built, the more I was able to chip that wall away. And she said, brother, I am so impressed by your, I can't remember what she called it, preaching or teaching. She said, I would like to go get my anointing oils. Now, you heard my brothers go in earlier about the anointing, these things that were done by the conjurement back in the day. The sister went and got her anointing oils, and she starts speaking in tongues. You heard my brothers speak about speaking in tongues and where that come from. That's an ADOS thing. And she took the anointing oil and rubbed it on my left hand. Then she rubbed it on my right hand. Then she rubbed it on my forehead and said, I bless you in the name of Allah and in the name of Jesus. So, I had to share that story because it pulls together the purpose of what this show is about. And one was to show the other side of this ADOS history through Islam and through the ancient systems that we brought from Africa that are still being practiced to this day, but it's just being practiced in a way that it's Americanized, right? So in that, I want to go to what the man who I call a prophet, and that's Dr. King, right? I want to read from Dr. King, and I want to tie this thing up, and I want to play something, and then I want my brothers to come in. We build it, so I guess we could carry this thing on a little bit further. So this is what Dr. King says, and where do we go from here? Chaos or community? He says, in the 1st century BC, let me blow this up a little bit so y'all can see this. He says, in the 1st century BC, Cicero said, freedom is participation in power. Negroes should never want all power because they would deprive others of their freedom. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I went down. No. That's not where I'm supposed to start from. I'm supposed to start from here. Pardon me, family. He says, every man must ultimately confront the question, who am I? And seek to answer it honestly. One of the first principles of personal adjustment is the principle of self-acceptance. The Negro's greatest dilemma is that in order to be healthy, he must accept his ambivalence. The Negro is the child of 2 cultures, Africa and America. The problem is that in the search for wholeness, all too many Negroes seek to embrace only one side of their natures. Some, seeking to reject their heritage, are ashamed of their color, ashamed of Black art and music, and determine what is beautiful and good by the standards of white society. They end up frustrated and without cultural roots. Others seek to reject everything American and to identify totally with Africa, and to the point of wearing African clothes. We could bring up some people. I know the brother from Cobra, they always draped in some type of African type headdress, right? I'm just saying, we got to throw that in there. It says, King continues, they end up frustrated and without cultural rules. Others seek to reject everything American and to identify totally. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that already. But this approach leads to frustration because the American Negro is not an African. Let me read that again. But this approach leads also to frustration because the American Negro is not an African. King continues, the old Hegelian synthesis. Y'all hear me bring this up all the time. The old Hegelian synthesis still offers the best answer to many of life's dilemmas. And I'm going to get to that old Hegelian synthesis in a few. He continues, the American Negro is neither totally African nor totally Western. He is Afro-American, a true hybrid, a combination of two cultures. Who are we? We are the descendants of slaves, King says. We are the offspring of noble men and women who were kidnapped from their native land and chained in ships like beasts. This goes along with what Prophet Noble Drew Ali said. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, you were never slaves. You were bound free men. Which means, and that was to say that you don't come from a line or lineage of slaves. You come from a line of lineage of kings and queens and nobles. And I ain't saying all of the cultures in Africa. Africa was great kings and queens and nobles. But I mean, Dr. King said, who are we? We are the descendants of slaves. We are the offspring of noble men and women who were kidnapped from their native land and chained in ships like beasts. We are the heirs of a great and exploited continent known as Africa. We are the heirs of a past of rope, fire, and murder. I, for one, am not ashamed of this past. My shame is for those who became so inhuman that they could inflict this torture upon us. But we are also Americans. And remember, I showed Noble Drew Ali with the American flags and bringing up the quote where he said, don't confuse this Moorish national divine movement with any back to Africa movement, because we're not that. King says, but we are also Americans, abused and scorned, though we may be. Our destiny is tied up with the destiny of America. That's a fact. We have been citizens since day one. We've touched on it on this platform, and I got a video back in my archives that you could check out by the same name called We've Been Citizens Since Day One. He continues, in spite of the psychological appeals of identification with Africa, the Negro must face the fact that America is now his home, a home that he helped to build through blood, sweat, and tears. Since we are Americans, the solution to our problem will not come through seeking to build a separate Black nation within a nation, but by finding that creative minority of the concern from the oft-times apathetic majority, and together moving toward the colorless power that we all need for security and justice. Now, I want to touch on a point there, because a lot of Moors get Prophet Noble Drew Ali confused by what he means when he speaks about our nationality being Moorish American. And King speaks to that, meaning this separate nation, meaning we have to be cordoned off from the rest of America. No, that is not the vision. And that is some of what was being said by Black nationalists in that day. But King said, but by finding that creative minority of the concern from the oft-times apathetic majority, talking about the sympathetic European Americans in this country called white people. What did Prophet Noble Drew Ali say? The Moorish Islamic leader. He said, the Europeans are helping me. Why not you? The Negro problem is your problem. I could stop sharing from here. It's a bunch more I wanted to read. That first century piece about Cicero was powerful, and King speaking about the essence of democracy, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, before I bring my brothers in, I got to share this one more thing, because King also says in that book that, and I paraphrase, that uniformity is not a requisite for unity. Y'all hear me repeat that so much on this show. So this show wasn't about bashing Christianity. We will voice our research and say that that's not our original religion. It was something that many of us, ADOS here, were in fact forced into, and this was brought up. But that is not the overall message of tonight's broadcast. This is the overall message of tonight's broadcast. Hold on for a minute. Let me pull this up. Okay, hold on. Let me see let me know if y'all hear this, if y'all can hear this. Y'all can't hear that? Okay. Let me come up out of that. Share audio. Mm-hmm. Oh, I just lost it. Oh, there you go. Hold on, family. Bear with me. because this ties in what we're doing here tonight with this particular program. All right, here we go. Here we go. This is Muhammad Ali and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So let's take a listen, family.
You can't hear it.
Y'all still can't hear it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, what's going on? What is going on here? No, y'all got to hear this. The family got to hear this because this is very, very important. Let's try this one more time. And if y'all can't hear it, I'll just give a breakdown of what these two giants of ours were saying. Y'all still can't hear it?
Nah.
You can't hear? Oh man, I wanted this to really play tonight. But
where's the link? Put the link. Maybe one of us.
I got it downloaded to the computer. So King and Muhammad Ali had a meeting, and the reporter, he's prying. What did y'all discuss about? In sum, Muhammad Ali said it's none of y'all business. When the Kennedy and Khrushchev and them, they go have their meeting. That's when you see King laughing at on the screen right there. They don't come out there and tell y'all all the secrets that they discuss. That's the same thing that happened with us in our meeting. We don't need to tell the white man all of our business and what we discuss. After Muhammad Ali says this, the reporter goes right to King as if King is going to say, King is like, I'm going to repeat after my brother Muhammad Ali. We're not going to discuss that. But Muhammad Ali rounds it out with, King rounds what he says out with we, although we come from different backgrounds, different religions, we share the same oppression. Our people are oppressed the same. And then at the end of the video, Muhammad Ali puts his arms around Martin Luther King Jr. and said, this is my brother right here. And what we're looking at right here is we're looking at the Black church and the Black Muslim movement together. The problem with the Black Muslim movement back in the days was that they were apolitical. And that's the problem with the Black Muslim movement today. And that is that they are apolitical because Farrakhan, by his own will, could direct a good portion of that voting block to start getting behind measures, to start getting behind some of the things that we at BTP are speaking about with the congressional push and putting this pressure on these congressmen and these congressional seats coming up so that we could have these reparationists on the ballot pushing and promoting our reparations. And this is what we have to do today. We cannot make this mistake that Malcolm made with Martin back in the days. And we sit here, and I'm going to boldly proclaim, as I've said before, we represent the Malcolm. We represent Malcolm of today. Y'all not killing us off at all. We here. We are the resurrected spirit, being that we talking about those ancestral spirits, because that's how I see what Yvette and Tone did. Wait, they're bringing up this ADOS movement, and as my brother Grimm broke down the spirit behind it, that spirit got it, that Martin Luther King Jr. element behind it, and we plug in with that Malcolm element with an understanding of what King did and how this thing needs to be marched forward. And so our job here at BTP is to be the power, and so we are taking up the mantle to help march the message of Malcolm and Martin forward. And by using that old Hegelian synthesis, we get rid of the bad parts, keep the good parts, and synthesize them into one movement. And that movement is essentially divine and national. So Logic got it pulled up, but I still don't hear it. You muted, Logic. That could be the reason why.
Oh, as Senator Fulbright said.
Okay, there you go. Bring it back, bro.
What did you discuss back in the hotel room?
Nothing, just friends, just like Khrushchev and Kennedy and everybody. When the people, all of the politicians of all other white races come together, and they, although they believe different, they think different, whites can come together and discuss the common cause. But whenever a few of us come together, the world is shook up. And I say, whatever went back there is our business.
Reverend King, do you agree?
Oh, yes. We had a very good discussion on many matters. And of course, these are not things that we would discuss here, but we do have common problems and common concerns. And above all, as Muhammad Ali has just said, we are all victims of the same system of oppression. And even though we may have different religious beliefs, this does not at all bring about a difference in terms of our concern.
Still brothers.
Do you share the same, one more question, do you share the same concern that Muhammad has for his draft status?
Oh, I certainly do. My views on the draft are very clear. I'm against it. And I think the sooner our country does away with the draft, the better it will be for everybody. I'm very disturbed about the militaristic posture of our nation. And I think until we have a radical reordering of priorities in our country, we're going more and more to the depths, and I should say to the doom that follows arrogance of power, as Senator Fulbright said.
Ooh, powerful. I'm glad the family got a chance to hear that. Anybody want to touch on any of that? Go in. We're going to close it out in about 15. We've been on here preaching and teaching and conjuring and a whole bunch of other stuff tonight, family.
Yeah. So I'll say this before we close it all out. Excuse me. We wanted to have a special show for y'all tonight, man, and do something like Abba's been saying we was gonna hit this piece for a minute. So we wanted to come and do this for y'all tonight. And I think this was a special cooking, home cooked meal for a special ADOS meal that we was able to put on the table tonight. Man, we had our brother, we wish Josh could have been on, but we had our brother Grimion on tonight. This is our original brother that we all been building for years and years and years and years together, man. And it's such a good thing to have him on and come in and go in with us, man. We all haven't been together and went in like this in a long time. And we'll be back. I just want y'all to know we'll get back to politics and doing our regular thing. But this is a special show for y'all tonight. Mm-hmm. Monday, don't forget to check us out. We're gonna be on the 13%. I think that starts at 7.
8. I think 8 hour time.
8 hour time. Oh yeah, 7 day time, 8 hour time. All right, and we're gonna be bringing that fire. We're gonna be talking about reparations, a pure reparations program, a Black agenda with Sister Cynthia McDonald, right, and Brother Arthur Ward. And we're gonna really be going in. Y'all don't want to miss that. And then we're gonna have a really good, important show Tuesday on our channel. You don't want to miss these 2 shows coming up. They're very important, family. It's going to be a lot of instructions. You're going to want to bring your pen and your pencils with Monday and Tuesday show. Do not miss the 13% show, the 13% show that we're going to be we're going to be guests on that show. Do not miss it. Do not miss the Tuesday show. Tuesday is going to be very powerful.
That's right.
Do not miss it. And glad to have everybody on. Y'all stayed on much later than we normally go on. Mm-hmm. It was outstanding time to have this family discussion. It was really good.
This one of them dinner table discussions, right?
Yeah.
We need to have with the family, right? We sitting on the other side of the table, but we all sitting at the table. So, and it was something else I wanted to pull up, but I'm not. This video, man, Brother Ali sent to me earlier, where Dr. Cornel West visits one of the temples, the Moorish Science Temple of America in Detroit. This video seemed like it came out maybe last year, maybe the beginning of this year before Bernie drops out. And they put that video up yesterday. And I mean, this thing was so powerful. This video, I might even close out. When we close out, I might just have to play some of it, man, because it was just it lined up with, and we're speaking about the spirit of the ancestors right now. To see Cornel West go in a Moorish science temple, already know who Noble Drew Ali is, because he's asking questions. Like he was from Newark, right? Oh no, he wasn't from Newark. He just started the base in Newark. those of us who are a little more scholarly, we would have had a different type of conversation with the good brother Cornel West. But their conversation still went good because Cornel West was looking at some of the symbolism. And I got to close it out with that, family. So after
Grim said she should be backstage.
All right, there you go. There you go. So, brother Grim, yeah, they telling me to play it. So yeah, I'm gonna play that after we get finished. That was powerful to see Cornel West going up in the Moorish Science Temple, America, and just like locking in with the symbolism, because love is a universal language, and King speaks about that. And where do we go from here? Chaos of community. I keep calling it from here to equality. I got that on the brain. I got that on the brain because that's all I've been into the past 2 weeks. So, but brother Grim, you wanted to add on before we close out, brother?
Yeah, brother. I just want to add on real quick, then I'm gonna bounce. Man, look, just tie into what everybody was saying tonight. What brother Ware L was saying. Man, look. And the point that I got from what we was discussing on the show, I want to tell all the ADOS people, man, honor, deify, and respect your noble ancestors. We're not talking about necessarily just some obscure ancestor from Africa that may or may have not been a king or a serf or what have you. We talking about them people that was on them plantations, them people who left them plantations during the emancipation, right? During the Reconstruction era. Those people that became your great-grandma, your great-great-grandma, your grandma, your grandpa, your daddy, your mama, your uncles, your cousins, and all those people that are noble. We got to make that distinction, that are noble, honorable people who passed from this human life, right? Before you and I. We got, where L touched on that too. We talk about George Washington. We talk about all of these different people that ain't have no relations to us. And we can't even respect mama, daddy, uncle, cousin who passed on. Get a picture of your ancestor, of the person in your family that you loved and loved you. And don't just put them up on a wall like most people do, but make an altar to them. You know why? Because that is something that ADOS people did. That's part of our spirituality. Learn, study, and research and act, because the spiritual system amongst us that a lot of white people in this country are studying right now as alternative religion is not necessarily just religious, but it's practical. And those people are into practical things like our ancestors were. So you ain't learning something just to have a belief, but you are learning something, right, to use as a tool and as a mechanism to create something better in your life. Look, let me say something. I was in the Moorish Science Temple with my brothers, all these brothers here, the Moorish Science Temple of America. But, and I came on the show and talked about my experience in the MSTA. Now, this is not against Prophet Noble Drew Ali, but this is just against some foolishness that everybody know that's going on in these various branches. But I'm going to leave it there. But let me tell you something. When I was in the Moorish Science Temple of America, that was some of the lowest times of my life. And I really couldn't know. I was trying to do right, and I'm doing right, and I'm working, and I'm building, and I'm wondering why the hell I'm going through some of these things. I don't think I'm a bad person. I'll give you the shirt off my back. But when I when I left the MST of A and I added that aspect to my life to where I started studying and honoring my ancestors literally and practically, that junk changed my life 1,000%. And I'm going to say that much. And look, if y'all listening, let me tell y'all something. Y'all ancestors got y'all back against not only just these politicians that don't want to give us what we are justly due in the form of reparations and to make us whole and to create the equality in this country as far as income inequality, right? Check this out. They against them people that's messing with you at work. Them people that's giving you a hard time in your personal life. And if you call on them and you find a noble way to get access to them, you'll be protected from all that bullshit that these people out there got waiting for you right now. I'm telling y'all, your ancestors will jack them people up. I was gonna use another word. I'm telling y'all, I didn't experience it, but that's part of our spiritual ADOS system, man. And that's all I got to say. I say peace.
Honors to my brother Grim, man. Please bless us with your presence more often. I've been trying to get my brother on the show for the longest. He ain't been wanting to come on. I really would like for him to come on like at least like twice a month, maybe on a Sunday like this, and get into some of the ADOS giants. Like this brother right here is a wealth of knowledge. Each of us are proficient in certain fields. And my brother Grim, he is a walking encyclopedia, and we like to style ourselves as polymaths, right? We are proficient in several different subjects, so we can jump from religion to spirituality as it's practiced today, to politics. I mean, y'all hear my brother Logic go in all the time, and he can, and y'all heard him tonight, go in right on cue with the rest of what it is that we're talking about. My brother Ali, another one, just the wealth of knowledge, very analytical, just another powerful mind that knows how to tie and weave all of this stuff together in such a practical man. I used to call him the sniper. He's just this dude up in the tower just sniping dudes from a distance. And now I call him the professor. So, Brother Ali, if you have something to say, brother, to take us up out of here.
Wow. I was gonna say something, but I feel like it may be like starting trouble or something. So I don't want to go back into it. Right.
All right.
it had something to do with the piece about I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And what that means, but you know what? I'll leave that alone.
We'll bring that back another time, or maybe one of these other Sunday shows we do.
Yeah.
Man, we were sent to the lost sheep of the house of Canaan, man.
That's a fact. Like, you know, blessed be Canaan, a savior of saviors shall he be unto his brethren. We reversing the biblical curse. Blessed be Canaan. Brother Logic, you have something to share before we get up out of here?
Oh no, I said my piece.
All right, definitely. Okay, family, we've reached, man, we went down there 3 hours on this one.
3 hours today. Yeah.
You know, I think this was an excellent discussion. I think that it was needed. I wanted to inform other parts of the family that, you know, we have a multifaceted ADOS culture here in the United States of America. And we have to move collectively. We have to move together. We have to understand that we have a specific lineage that binds us. And that lineage now has a name, America's Descendants of Slavery, this institution that our ancestors were cruelly subjugated in. I could debate theology all day. I don't think nobody's going to defeat me in a debate on theology. You bring your Christian, you bring a Hebrew Israelite, and we get to getting into Islam. If you ain't got this book right here, I ain't even get a chance to get into the Walking Quran. If you ain't got this book right here, the archaeology of sub-Saharan Africa, You ain't got this book right here, pre-colonial Black Africa, where Sheikh Anta Diop is destroying the myth that the Muslims went into West Africa and destroyed everything. If you ain't got this book right here, Egyptology, the Missing Millennium, where it destroys this myth that the Arabs went into Egypt and defaced the monuments and all of that stuff back in the day. If you ain't got a Moorish Americans book, this is Jose Pimenta Bay, Othello's Children in the New World, you're not qualified to have this discussion with me. And I got other pieces as well. You're not winning this debate. Just not. So, but that's something else. That's a theological debate that we can have. We can certainly have. Who are the true Canaanites? Is it the biblical people based on the biblical narrative, or is it us here in the United States of America? We can have that debate, and I'm letting you know now you're going to lose, right? But that should not stop us as ADOS from moving together towards the collective goal as reparationists. It shouldn't stop us at all. It should further our bond that we could get together and have theological debates and then shake hands and break whatever type of bread you want to break and stand together like Muhammad Ali and Martin Luther King Jr. did in that video clip as brothers of the same struggle under the same system of oppression. And that's what we should be pushing towards. And that's what this show was geared towards tonight. But we just had to bring some facts out, and we wanted to show how not only Islamic culture, but the culture of what we would call the Yoruba, right, is right here in America. It's thriving. It's thriving. It's a part of us. It's just Americanized, and it is us. And like my brother said, we got to get back into that. I could go in on the things that Noble Drew Ali was like eyewitness accounts that we have saved in the archives. That'll be for another time, of course. But this early conjuremen, and right now we need to start conjuring up our ancestors, the spirit of the freedmen. That's why we started the United Sons and Daughters of the Freedmen. We have to conjure up their spirits. We have to conjure up their energy as we move forward in this fight. We're just waiting for that determination letter, and we're going to hit the ground running. We're going to hit the ground running. So I thank you all for listening and enduring this 3-hour spiritual lesson and preaching and teaching that we all, and conjuring that we gave y'all all tonight, right? And I want to give a shout out to everybody that's in the fight, man. And like I say, don't just fight the power, become the power, and then you will have the power to make a change. So what I want to do is I want us to close out with a little bit of this video with Dr. Cornel West, one of my favorites. I mean, just intellectuals. You got your Jordan Petersons on the European American. Well, no, he's not European American. I'll just say the European side. What's the guy? Yiannopoulos, yeah, I can't even think of these people's names right now, but it's a bunch of them that deem themselves as intellectual. I don't think any of them can touch Dr. Cornel West because he's rooted in our history. And every time you hear Dr. Cornel West speak, he brings up the Muslims and the mosques and the temples. He brings up the Jews and the synagogues, and he brings up the church. He brings us up in unison because we need to be moving together. So let's share that audio. Y'all let me know if y'all can hear it. If not, I'll close out, and maybe it's just something on my end. So let's go with this right here. Let me know if y'all can hear that.
Yeah, it's very low.
That brings back some things.
Yeah, it'll pick up a little bit.
That's the truth. 28. 1928. Garvey had just been deported. Yes. Garvey was deported in 27. It's about 26, 27, 28. It's 27. Because the trial was 25. Right. 29 Louisiana. And all the people there, they put him in the boat. Remember what he said? Farewell. Farewell. So when I come back, I'm coming in a whirlwind. That's right. He said, I'm coming back in a whirlwind. That's right. No, you know where you got that from? No, where you get that from? You got that from chapter 1, verse 3, when God said, Nahum said, God has his way in the whirlwind. In the storm. Oh, okay. That's where you got that from. So you got to be in the whirlwind to meet God. So Garvey said, I'm coming with the divine spirit in me, loving black people, and I'm gonna be in the whirlwind. Oh, okay. Piece. Now that's a historical piece right there. I know they said I was coming back in the whirlwind, but I did not know where he got that from. And you know what our ancestors came up with. Remember that song, Wade in the Water? Oh! God gonna trouble in the water. Wade in the water, mama. Wade in the water. God gonna trouble the water. Did you meet God in the trouble? Oh my God. Now you see what happened? Yeah. You see what happened? Wow. He had to bring the sister out the water. Out of there. Trouble in the water. Yeah. He had to bring her out the water. No, you see. Make it teach him a moment. What he understood is God uses us to get in the water, in the trouble, but you got to go in with love. Whoa! You got to go in with love. Oh, what you say? Look at that. That word love you talking about? Right there. Love is the savior of the world. Savior of the world. Learn to love instead of hate. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We as a people, we need to learn to love instead of hate. You see, love goes first. See, love is first. Without love first, right there. But you know what another key is? What's that? What is it? What's up, kid? You gotta learn how to love yourself. Oh! Stop! How to love yourself. Uh-oh. No, you love everybody else. You love everybody else but yourself. You love everybody else but yourself. Oh, you do. Something wrong. Something wrong. You're muted, bro. Your mic is muted.
All right, I'm gonna stop it right there. Just good night, fam. Some people saying it was skipping, but I had to show y'all Dr. West going into an Islamic temple, building with the Moors, and that's what it's supposed to be about, family. And us educating each other is key to moving forward, and that's what we hope we did here tonight. And with that, I'll say peace.